Chapter 2356. Ji Feng hearing this, Xuetu's gaze turned strange. You don't have to do anything. You just have to raise your bloodline to the 10th grade as soon as possible and force out half of your blood essence. Then, you'll be able to help Mad Dog be reborn. Of course, if Mad Dog goes completely out of control before you break through, you'll have to kill Mad Dog. This is my order to you. Although it was a bit like asking for repayment, Mad Dog was brought up by Xuetu's day. How could he bear to kill him? Therefore, Yi Fei's appearance finally made Xuetu make up his mind. Feeling this determination, Yi Fei's scalp tingled. At the same time, he couldn't help but sympathize with Mad Dog. He knew that Xuetu wouldn't kill Mad Dog, even if there was a 1 in a million chance. Xuetu's biggest wish was not to kill Mad Dog, but to save Mad Dog. Thinking of this, Yi Fei's expression suddenly became serious. He cupped his hands and said seriously, "Senior, don't worry. I will definitely break through to the 10th grade before Mad Dog." Hearing Yi Fei's promise, Xuetu's iron face flashed with a touch of relief. Mad Dog's condition is becoming more and more unstable. He is no longer suitable to stay in the gladiator arena. I will let Mad Dog follow you in the future. If you have any problems in the future, you can let Mad Dog help you. If Mad Dog can't solve it, you can also come to me. Except for the war with the Palace of the Divine King, I can settle anything in the City of the Divine King for you. Xuetu's words had a deeper meaning. This was also Yi Fei's advance payment for helping Mad Dog. After all, it was too difficult to solve Mad Dog's bloodline mutation. Only a warrior with a 10th grade bloodline could do it. Such a warrior was rare in the entire Divine Prefecture. Moreover, these martial artists all had incomparably powerful forces protecting them. They simply wouldn't risk harming their own bloodline to help Mad Dog, not to mention that behind Mad Dog stood such a powerful ancient family. Not until Xuetu met Yi Fei, and not long ago, Pan Wang suddenly visited and seemed to inadvertently reveal that there seemed to be a bloodline stronger than the 9th grade sealed in Yi Fei's body. This finally gave Xuetu hope. This was also the reason why Xuetu made such a promise. Yi Fei didn't know that Xuetu's change in attitude was actually Pan Wang's scheme. However, he was still very happy about Xuetu's full support. After all, with Xuetu's full support, he basically didn't have to worry about any Sir Gods snatching his Ghost Emperor Cauldron in the future. At the same time, Yi Fei's heart skipped a beat. He immediately said, embarrassedly, "Senior Xuetu, I really do have something that I need your help with. If possible, I would like to continue fighting in the gladiator arena." "That's impossible. You want to fight?" "No way." Xuetu's expression changed. The last time Yi Fei fought, the gladiator arena almost suffered a loss. If Yi Fei fought again, it would be terrible. Yi Fei's face darkened. What happened to his full support? In the end, he fell out with him on the spot. However, he was too strong. "Senior, you won't stop my dragon turtle from fighting, right?" Yi Fei could only settle for the next best thing. He hoped that the dragon turtle would do well. "Are you talking about that little black turtle that eats like a pig? All right, if it's that turtle, it can fight as many times as it wants." Xuetu heaved a sigh of relief. If Yi Fei fought, he would definitely be nervous. However, if it was that black turtle that was as fat as a ball, Xuetu wouldn't feel any pressure at all. Xuetu even kindly advised, "Yi Fei, if you lack Xian veins, you can tell me. Why send your black turtle to its death?" After all, in Xuetu's eyes, not only was the dragon turtle lazy and gluttonous, but it was also at the sovereign realm. If it fought, it would only become food for the other vicious beasts and become a laughingstock. Only Yi Fei said confidently, "Senior, don't worry. I have confidence in Blackie. It can't beat it. It can still run away." Sigh. Xuetu felt that it was a pity. Since Yi Fei didn't want to listen, he couldn't persuade him anymore. After all, it was just a little sovereign realm turtle. What could it do? Therefore, Xuetu didn't care about this anymore. He just ordered someone to call Mad Dog in. Soon, Mad Dog rushed in with red eyes like an angry beast. His eyes immediately stared coldly at Yi Fei. This made Yi Fei feel a lot of pressure. Fortunately, he had dealt with the Mad Martial King before. He knew that as long as Mad Dog wasn't provoked, Mad Dog wouldn't flip out. Yi Fei politely cupped his hands and said, Greetings, Big Brother Mad Dog. All right, Big Brother Mad Dog, what's your real name? After all, Mad Dog was going to follow him for a long time. It wasn't right to keep calling him Mad Dog. Mad Dog said coldly, I don't have a name. I was born in a dog's house and drank dog milk. Just treat me as a mad dog. Nonsense. From now on, your name is G-Phone, and you're no longer Mad Dog in my deathmatch arena. From now on, you will follow Yi Fei, Shui-Tu scolded. Arena Master, you don't want me anymore? Mad Dog was shocked. He knelt on the ground, and tears of blood flowed out of his eyes. This touched Yi Fei. Shui-Tu's eyes also became wet. He waved his hand in the air and forced Mad Dog to stand up. Mad Dog, it's not that I don't want you anymore. I just want you to follow Yi Fei and have him solve the problem of your bloodline. Once your problem is solved, the deathmatch arena will welcome you back at any time. Only then did Mad Dog's agitated emotions calm down. However, when he looked at Yi Fei, his eyes were filled with a strong desire to fight. Since this is the order of the field master, Mad Dog has no choice but to obey. However, if you want me to follow you, you have to defeat me. I don't want to follow a weakling. Big Brother G-Phone, are you sure you want to fight me? Yi Fei didn't say anything. He just calmly took out the Ghost Emperor Cauldron again. Seeing that Mad Dog's expression didn't change, Yi Fei immediately formed the Taiji Sword Cauldron again. He took out the Darksteel Heavy Sword and activated the runes on it. At the same time, the Azure Dragon wings appeared on his back. Then Yi Fei stepped on the Soul Cauldron and entered the Ghost Gate. He looked at Mad Dog with high fighting spirit. Mad Dog's crazed expression couldn't help but twitch violently. He growled, If you have the guts, don't use the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Let's fight. Boom! Sword light filled the air. Yi Fei walked out of the Ghost Gate. Suddenly, the sword light of death and the light of desolation appeared between heaven and earth. They fused together and formed a special Taiji light. On the spot, the pavilion was torn apart and destroyed. Shui-Tu sat on the stool in a daze as he watched his beloved pavilion turn into ruins. The black cat that had disappeared suddenly reappeared. It rubbed against Shui-Tu's hand as if comforting him. Mad Dog's crazy fighting spirit instantly collapsed. He said bitterly, You win. I'll follow you from now on. Yi Fei hurriedly waved his hand and ran over to Mad Dog to hold his hand. He said sincerely, Big Brother G-Phone, you're too humble. Actually, with your strength, you're only slightly weaker than me. You can completely crush any other Dao Lord except me. Hearing Yi Fei's comforting words, and seeing that Yi Fei was only at the mid-stage of the Lord of Heaven realm, Mad Dog snorted and was speechless. Chapter 2357. Cooperation in the end. Shui-Tu decided that what the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. He allowed Yi Fei to stay there and communicate with Mad Dog. He walked out of the courtyard and suddenly thought of something. He called over a manager and instructed, Has Yi Fei's black tortoise started fighting yet? Tell the people below to pay attention. That black tortoise is so weak. Be careful not to be trampled to death by the other vicious beasts. The manager had a strange expression on his face. He shook his head and said, Arena Master, I was just about to report this matter to you. Young Master Ye's tortoise has turned the sky upside down. No one in the Dominator realm is a match for it. Right now, that tortoise has applied to go to the Lord of Heaven's Beast Battle Arena. The manager's words made Shui-Tu stunned. That lazy tortoise had actually defeated all the Dominator realm experts and went to the Lord of Heaven's Beast Battle Arena. This scene seemed somewhat familiar. Shui-Tu had a vague feeling that something bad was going to happen. Let's go. Follow me to take a look. Shui-Tu rushed to the Beast Battle Arena area as fast as he could. At this moment, a battle was about to start. However, there wasn't the usual cheering from the audience. Instead, there was a wave of angry cursing. Kill that black tortoise. Shameless black tortoise. If you have the guts, show yourself. I can just send out any one of the vicious beasts, and they can swallow you whole. Black tortoise, go to hell. You made me lose money. All sorts of curses came one after another. There were even people who threw eggs and rotten vegetables to vent the anger in their hearts. Shui-Tu hurriedly looked at the bestial battle arena. From afar, he saw a big black ball squatting on the ground. Opposite the black ball was a mighty giant bear, the Lord of Heaven's middle stage Vajra bear. That black tortoise might be in danger this time, Shwetu muttered. The manager behind him said with a sad face, Arena Master, if you think that way, then you're wrong. Look, that black tortoise is shameless again. Roar. In the bestial battle arena, the dragon turtle roared angrily and suddenly rolled at the feet of the diamond bear like a rubber ball. Then it shrunk its neck and limbs, leaving only a large turtle shell exposed. The owner of the King Kong bear immediately acted as if he was facing a great enemy. He stood outside the arena and shouted, Don't attack it. We'll just waste time with it. At worst, it'll be a draw. The Lord of Heaven's intermediate Vajra bear doesn't dare to attack a late-stage sovereign dragon turtle. Shwetu was puzzled. Then, a scene that shocked Shwetu appeared. Just as the Vajra bear turned around and planned to ignore the dragon turtle, the dragon turtle suddenly popped its head out and aimed at the Vajra bear's buttocks. The Vajra bear's furious roar resounded throughout the entire bestial battle arena. The huge palms immediately pounced over and aimed at the dragon turtle, punching, kicking, and biting. When the Lord of Heaven realm Vajra bear went berserk, it definitely had the strength to sweep away those of the same realm. Unfortunately, the Vajra bear encountered the dragon turtle. In the face of the Vajra bear's crazy attacks, the dragon turtle only did one thing. It retracted its head and continued to reveal its black tortoise dragon shell, allowing the Vajra bear to hit it however it wanted. Even the sound of the dragon turtle snoring could be heard from within the turtle shell. This provoked the Vajra bear to go completely berserk. In the end, it simply lifted the dragon turtle up and hammered it with all its strength. Even so, the Vajra bear was still unable to break the dragon turtle's black tortoise dragon shell. Instead, because the dragon turtle was too heavy, it directly exhausted its strength and was pressed to the ground by the dragon turtle, losing its ability to fight. Only then did the dragon turtle carefully poke its head out from within the turtle shell, looking as if it had just woken up. In the spectator stands, there were disappointed and frustrated cries from the spectators everywhere. Shwetu's face also twitched. If this situation continued, not a single one of the vicious beasts of the Lord of Heaven realm will be able to break through the dragon turtle's defense. Letting the dragon turtle fight was purely letting Yi Fei take advantage of the situation. Shwetu decisively ordered, From now on, this black turtle will be suspended from all competitions. If the dragon turtle was allowed to continue sleeping like this, the spectators in the bestial battle arena would definitely be so angry that they would walk away. Hearing this, the steward behind him had a troubled expression. Arena Master, didn't you just order that this black turtle can fight as many times as it wants? When Shwetu heard this, he was completely dumbfounded. In the end, he could only sigh helplessly and instruct the steward, pass down the order. From tomorrow onwards, the bestial battle arena will be suspended for a month. Just say that we want to expand the arena. All right, how many Shin veins did Yi Fei bet on this black turtle? The steward carefully replied, I heard that young Master Yi bet all his assets on it. He even once won a pawn off the Ghost Emperor cauldron, but that cauldron was too valuable and we didn't dare to accept it. Shwetu's iron face trembled as he looked at the bouncing dragon turtle. He suddenly felt dizzy. All his assets. Xiao Feng is really ruthless. In the best restaurant in the City of Divine Kings, Yang Hao, who had just received the news, was so furious that he smashed his wine jug on the ground. He had just received the news from the Yin Yang Palace. Elder Yang's death had infuriated the Yin Yang Palace. However, the person who had killed him was Shwetu, and the Deathmatch Palace was much more powerful than the Yin Yang Palace. The Yin Yang Palace could only swallow their anger. However, there were still some elders who doubted Yang Hao's ability. These doubts obviously posed a huge threat to Yang Hao's position in the Yin Yang Palace. Yang Hao knew that if he didn't eliminate these doubts as soon as possible, he would lose his position as the young master of the Yin Yang Palace, even if he had a 9th grade bloodline. Young master, what should we do? We just received news that Shui somehow got Mad Dog to follow Yi Fei. If Yi Fei defected to the Deathmatch Palace because of this, it would basically be impossible for us to take action against him again. The half-step divine Lord Elder said worriedly. He was Yang Hao's trusted aide, so he was bound to Yang Hao for good or ill. Upon hearing this, Yang Hao's expression turned sinister as he sneered. He won't have the chance to join the Deathmatch Palace. Since I can't deal with him alone, we'll add another person. What do you mean, young master? I don't believe it. Didn't Shui say that he wouldn't care as long as a divine lord didn't take action? In that case, we'll use people below the divine lord level to assassinate Yi Fei. Under the pressure of the Yin-Yang Palace, Yang Hao finally decided to take the risk and assassinate Yi Fei. The half-step divine Lord Elder's expression changed when he heard this plan. Young master, please reconsider. Yi Fei's strength is nothing to worry about, but his Ghost Emperor Cauldron. The Ghost Emperor Cauldron? Without that cauldron, Yi Fei will be like an ant on the ground that I can easily trample to death. Wait a moment, I'm going to see someone. Yang Hao suddenly thought of something and quickly left the restaurant. He went to the God King's palace again and entered an extremely elegant courtyard. Brother Du, are you here? Yang Hao is here to visit. I'm not free. Du Cheng had been in a bad mood recently. He had studied the Inheritance Scroll more than 100 times, but he still hadn't been able to master it. Naturally, he was in the mood to see Yang Hao. Yang Hao sneered when he heard this. Du Cheng, if you don't have time to see me, why don't you join forces with me to deal with Yi Fei? I heard that you suffered a great loss at the hands of Yi Fei. These words undoubtedly pricked Du Cheng's sensitive nerves. Within the courtyard, a figure filled with anger and killing intent immediately rushed out and said sharply, "What did you say? What do you know?" Chapter 2358. Later stage of the Lord of Heaven, however. In order to deal with Yi Fei and wash away his shame, Yang Hao forcefully suppressed the discomfort in his heart. A smile appeared on his face as he said, "Brother Du, I've already thought of a flawless plan. As long as it succeeds, that Yi Fei will definitely die. As long as it succeeds, that Ghost Emperor Cauldron will belong to you. I only want Yi Fei's head." Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Du Cheng's excited expression couldn't help but become greedy. It was this cauldron that destroyed his physical body and forced him to use evil techniques to reconnect Wang Xiu's body. No one knew better than him how powerful the Ghost Emperor Cauldron was. Yang Hao is actually willing to give it to him? Looks like you have something very important that you need me to do. Du Cheng understood that since Yang Hao was willing to give up such a huge benefit, what he needed him to do must be very important. Yang Hao nodded as a sinister look appeared in his eyes. I won't hide it from Brother Du during this period of time. I've already thought of a way to restrain Yi Fei's Ghost Emperor Cauldron. However, to execute this method, we need someone who can lure Yi Fei out and into our ambush. Moreover, this person must be able to get close to Yi Fei. What you mean is that as long as someone can get close to Yi Fei, you can make Yi Fei unable to use that Ghost Emperor Cauldron. If there's no Ghost Emperor Cauldron, you and I can work together to kill Yi Fei. This plan isn't bad. Tell me about it in detail. Du Cheng clearly had a strong interest in this plan. Yang Hao was also incomparably proud as he revealed the plan that he had been racking his brains for a month. Yi Fei also didn't know that Du Cheng and Yang Hao had already started to collude. Under Shui almost green gaze, Yi Fei was completely satisfied. He took the nearly 100,000 Xian veins that he had won from betting on the Dragon Turtle and left the deathmatch arena. In addition, the Dragon Turtle had won. In just one day, Yi Fei had obtained 100,000 Xian veins. If this situation were to happen a few more times, it wouldn't be impossible for me to gather 1,000,000 profound veins. Yi Fei thought happily. Mad Dog, who was following behind, had a strange expression on his face. He had just received a new order from Shui, which was to keep an eye on Yi Fei. If Yi Fei tried to take advantage of the situation in the arena again, he was to inform Shui so that he could immediately use the excuse of expanding the arena to forcefully stop the battles in the animal arena. Clearly, Yi Fei and the Dragon Turtle had become the most unpopular people in the deathmatch arena. Mad Dog hesitated, wondering if he should warn him. However, when he saw the Dragon Turtle, who was carrying a small wooden tablet and constantly asking for rewards from Yi Fei, Mad Dog sighed helplessly and decided to keep his mouth shut. After the Dragon Turtle expressed for the third time that it was very hungry and tired from fighting too many times today, Yi Fei finally endured the pain and generously handed over a large amount of magnetite to Mad Dog. Then he asked Mad Dog to take the Dragon Turtle out for a stroll. As for himself, he couldn't wait to return to the Lord Pan Palace and enter seclusion again. He already knew that he had comprehended the complete golden body of despair. The golden body of despair was different from ordinary martial arts and divine abilities. It was a special martial art that fused cultivation techniques and divine abilities together. One had to reach the corresponding realm to cultivate it. If Yi Fei wanted to cultivate the golden body of despair of the Tao Lord realm, he had to break through to the Tao Lord realm first. At this moment, Yi Fei locked himself in his room and used the 100,000 Xian veins he had obtained from taking advantage of others to try to break through to the next realm, the late stage of the Lord of Heaven. To break through to this realm, he had to comprehend a third type of law that belonged to him. Before this, when I broke through to the early stage of the Lord of Heaven, I comprehended the law of battle magic. When I broke through to the mid-stage of the Lord of Heaven, I comprehended the law of Earth's core. Then, when I break through to the late stage of the Lord of Heaven, what law should I comprehend? Yes, why don't I use the 9 cauldron heaven-suppressing art to comprehend the sword cauldron law? The 9 cauldron heaven-suppressing art was a pure divine ability and not a cultivation technique for breaking through to the next realm. Therefore, Yi Fei could successfully cultivate it across realms. At the same time, the successful condensation of the sword cauldron also gave Yi Fei a deeper understanding of the sword Tao. Now, he wanted to turn this understanding into his third type of law, the third level law, and break through to the next realm. Boom! Yi Fei took out a large number of Xian veins. As he cultivated, these Xian veins seemed to turn into rivers that surged into his body. Squeak! In the beast-marked space, Xiao Chao stretched her back comfortably and diverted a portion of the Xian veins around Yi Fei into her body. After eating her fill, Xiao Chao began to sleep. In her sleep, Xiao Chao's body seemed to slowly grow a little. Yi Fei was immersed in cultivation and did not notice. As the Lord of Heaven's cultivation technique circulated, Yi Fei's consciousness once again entered the world of laws. In this world, his consciousness was infinitely enlarged, and he began to search for the third-level law that was suitable for him. However, the third-level law in the form of the sword cauldron was too rare. Even Yi Fei himself was not sure if such a law existed in this world. Just as he was about to give up, suddenly, a strong oppressive force came from afar. It was a strange cauldron formed by the light of countless laws. It emitted a faint sword light. It's the sword cauldron. This world really does have the sword cauldron law. Yi Fei's soul was excited. Without hesitation, he controlled his soul and fused it with the light of the laws. Boom! Not long after, the powerful aura of the third-level law spread out from Yi Fei's body. This aura was the aura of the sword cauldron. At the same time that the sword cauldron law condensed, Yi Fei's cultivation realm also advanced from the Lord of Heaven's mid-stage to the Lord of Heaven's late stage. If he took another step forward and perfected the Lord of Heaven's cultivation realm, he would become a half-step Tao Lord. It was also when Yi Fei was cultivating. In the God King's palace, Ziyue walked out of Zhao Yu's palace nervously. Outside, Du Cheng stood there in his white robes, looking extraordinarily handsome. Ziyue, I'm sorry to make you do such a thing. Du Cheng held a letter in his hand that Ziyue had brought out from Zhao Yu's palace. This made Ziyue very puzzled. Senior brother Du, why did you make me take out Zhao Yu's handwriting? If Zhao Yu hadn't been in seclusion to break through to become a Tao Lord, I wouldn't have dared to take it out. Looking at Du Cheng's handsome face, Ziyue still felt a trace of worry. If Zhao Yu found out that she had secretly taken away her handwriting, she probably wouldn't be able to set foot in this palace again. Seemingly sensing Ziyue's worry, Du Chong smiled gracefully and said with the bearing of a noble young master, "Ziyue, don't worry. I was just entrusted by someone. You don't know, but Yang Hao fell in love with Zhao Yu at first sight. Even if he can't see Zhao Yu in person, I think he should be satisfied to see Zhao Yu's handwriting." Yang Hao, the young master of the Yin Yang Palace who attacked Yi Fei but was defeated by Yi Fei? Ziyue actually knew about Yi Fei. Du Chong was a little surprised. "Where did you hear about Yi Fei?" Chapter 23:59. Letter from Zhao Yu before Zhao Yu came. She was the little princess of the God King's palace. But when Zhao Yu came, she became an ugly duckling. She had no choice but to suck up to Zhao Yu like a maid. How could Ziyue feel good about this? Du Chong was filled with fury and killing intent when he heard that. After Zhao Yu had come to the God King's palace, he had tried to pursue her more than once. He had even tried to matchmake them through Limoran, but in the end, Zhao Yu remained indifferent. She was not moved at all. Over time, Du Chong thought that Zhao Yu's personality had always been cold. But to his surprise, Zhao Yu actually noticed the small fry in his eyes. Du Chong couldn't stand it any longer. His tone became slightly sharp as he said, "Then you couldn't have really told Zhao Yu about Yi Fei, right?" Ziyu felt that something was amiss, but when she met Du Chong's gentle gaze and handsome appearance, her face turned red again. She quickly lowered her head and said, "How is that possible? That Yi Fei is very fickle. He even tried to pursue me before. How can I let such a filthy person enter Marshal Uncle Zhao's sight?" Ziyu's tone was filled with dissatisfaction. She hadn't forgotten the humiliation that Yi Fei had brought to her in the supreme Emperor Heaven. If it wasn't for Yi Fei, she would have entered the heavenly pool ancient land. These words caused Du Chong's eyes to flicker as if he had discovered a prey. What? This Yi Fei is actually trying to woo Ziyu? Haha, I have to say that Yi Fei is really lustful. He's courting death. Then, Du Chong couldn't help but think of an even more vicious idea. His gaze towards Ziyu became even more fiery. This caused Ziyu's face to turn even redder and her heart to race. She felt that the current Du Chong was not the same as before. In the past, Du Chong only had eyes for Zhao Yu, not her. He would never stare at her with such a passionate gaze. Could it be that senior brother, Du, knows that he won't be able to pursue Zhao Yu, so he's starting to pursue me? Ziyu grew even more bashful. "Junior sister Ziyue, I have a matter that requires your help." "Junior sister, are you willing?" Du Chong's handsome face emitted a cold light, but his tone was unprecedentedly gentle. The who had her head lowered didn't see it. She only listened to Du Chong's voice and didn't ask anything. She unconsciously nodded her head. A day later, Ziyu arrived at the Lord Pan Palace with a complicated expression. She did not expect that Du Chong would actually ask her to help deliver a letter to Yi Fei, inviting Yi Fei to the Heavenly Fragrance House for a chat. The reason Du Chong gave was that he wanted to be a peacemaker and resolve the grudge between Yi Fei and his good friend Yang Hao. This made things very difficult for Ziyu. Firstly, she had purposely concealed the fact that Yi Fei had come to the city of Divine Kings from Zhao Yu. Secondly, she did not think much of Yi Fei, who was an independent cultivator. Moreover, Ziyu was still brooding over the fact that Yi Fei had ignored her in the heavenly pool ancient land. However, when she thought of Du Chong's gentle request, Ziyu finally gritted her teeth and stepped into the Lord Pan Palace. Divine King Palace, Ziyu? Bai Yanran was outside the palace, in charge of recruiting new cultivators for the bloodline test. When she saw Ziyu, she couldn't help but be stunned. "Yanran, long time no see." Ziyu's expression was a little stiff. She used to have a good relationship with Bai Yanran. However, as they grew up, the gap between them gradually became obvious, especially when Bai Yanran grew prettier. Ziyu was dissatisfied and took the initiative to break off contact. This was also the reason why Ziyu didn't want to come over. However, Bai Yanran was very happy to see Ziyu. Although they hadn't seen each other for a long time, she still treated Ziyu as her best friend. She walked over excitedly and held Ziyu's hand. "Ziyu, are you here to see me?" "I'm here to see Yi Fei." Ziyu was a little embarrassed, but she was afraid that Bai Yanran would misunderstand. She quickly took out a letter and said, "Didn't Marshal Uncle Li promise Yi Fei to let him meet Zhao Yu? Marshal Uncle Zhao has already agreed. By the way, this is a letter from Marshal Uncle Zhao himself, inviting Yi Fei to Heavenly Fragrance House for a chat." When she said this, Ziyu was obviously a little guilty. Bai Yanran's expression was even more strange. "Zhao Yu actually wants to see Yi Fei? Sister, I'll go and kill that demon right now." Bai Shizhong appeared out of nowhere. He was full of jealousy, as if he wanted to kill someone. Many people looked askance at him. Bai Yanran's face immediately turned red. She glared at Bai Shizhong unhappily and said, "Brother, this is none of your business. Yi Fei is in the attic in front. Ziyu, you go there yourself." Bai Yanran asked Ziyu to go to Yi Fei's side courtyard by herself. Bai Shizhong was dumbfounded. Yanran can actually tolerate this kind of thing. That Yi guy is indeed a demon. Damn it, why can't I encounter such a good thing? Bai Shizhong was very unconvinced. Yi Fei was even more depressed. Today, he excitedly brought the dragon turtle to the death arena to continue earning mystic veins. In the end, he was told that the bestial battle arena had to be renovated and could not hold beast battles. And if he couldn't fight beasts, he wouldn't be able to obtain the mystic veins and cultivate the true golden body of despair. This made Yi Fei very unhappy. On the other hand, the dragon turtle heaved a huge sigh of relief. Yesterday, in a single breath, it made the mad dog accompany it for 24 more meals, giving the mad dog a fright. Until now, the dragon turtle was still lying on the ground with its belly facing the sky and burping. When it opened its mouth, it smelled like dragon meat buns. The smell made Yi Fei frown. He was already considering whether to wake up Xiao Qiao and drag the dragon turtle in to beat it up again. At this time, Ziyu walked in with a complicated expression and a hint of indifference. "Yi Fei, Marshal Uncle Zhao wants to see you. This is the invitation he gave you." She threw the invitation in her hand over. Yi Fei was stunned. Marshal Uncle Zhao? Could it be Zhao Yu? Although he could not go to the palace of the Divine King to see Zhao Yu, Yi Fei had asked Mad Dog to find out that Zhao Yu was in the palace of the Divine King. His status was very high. However, since Zhao Yu knew about his news, why did he not come personally? Instead, he sent Ziyu to deliver the letter? To be honest, his relationship with Ziyu could not be considered friendly. After the battle at the Heavenly Pool Ancient Land, they had completely fallen out. Then, Yi Fei opened the invitation and read it carefully. He saw the familiar handwriting. It was indeed Zhao Yu's handwriting. However, Yi Fei could not help but frown slightly when he read the contents. "Ziyu, are you sure that Zhao Yu asked you to give this to me?" Yi Fei kept his composure as he held the invitation in his hand. "Of course. The palace of the Divine King is the overlord of this place. Since Elderly has agreed to let you see Zhao Yu, he will not go back on his word. Marshal Uncle Zhao Yu will be waiting for you at the Heavenly Scent House. He will not wait for you if you are late. It's up to you whether you want to go or not." Ziyu did not answer Yi Fei's question directly. Instead, she used a tough attitude to cover up her guilty conscience. Then, she stopped talking to Yi Fei and turned to leave the Lord Pan's palace. Yi Fei narrowed his eyes and stared at Ziyu's back. In the end, he did not ask her to stay. Chapter 2360. True and false. Yi Fei looked at Bai Shizhong in surprise. "Big brother Bai, how did you know that this invitation was a scam?" Bai Shizhong's expression was solemn as he said in an unfathomable manner, "You don't need to know how I figured it out. Quickly give me the invitation. I'll go to the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion on your behalf." As he spoke, Bai Shizhong snatched the invitation. When he saw the beautiful handwriting on it, Bai Shizhong revealed a sly smile. Yi Fei felt that something was wrong. Bai Yanran walked in with a reddened face. He snatched the invitation back and returned it to Yi Fei. "What scam? Big brother, you're just trying to trick Yi Fei into going there yourself to meet Zhao Yu," Bai Yanran said, revealing the truth. Yi Fei was speechless. However, Bai Shizhong's words still made him wary. After all, with his relationship with Zhao Yu could have come directly if he wanted to meet him. However, Zhao Yu didn't do so and only asked Ziyu to send him an invitation. This was clearly the attitude of a stranger. This also made Yi Fei have two suspicions. Either Zhao Yu really had something to do and couldn't meet him, so he could only meet secretly at the Heavenly Fragrance Brothel, or someone was using Zhao Yu's name to trick him into going to the Heavenly Fragrance Brothel. After thinking through these 2 points, how could Yi Fei go to the appointment so easily? However, if he didn't go, he might lose a chance to contact Zhao Yu. Regardless of whether this invitation is real or fake, it's still worth taking the risk. However, I can't go to the Heavenly Fragrance Brothel. It's best to find someone to go there in my place. Then, I'll hide in the dark and wait for any changes, Yi Fei thought to himself. Then, he put away the invitation and looked at Mad Dog, who was standing in the distance. Big Brother G-Phone, does your deathmatch arena have any treasures or pills that can make people look like me? Asked Yi Fei. Yes. The Deathmatch Palace has a type of phantom mask that can change one's appearance. However, it has to be your appearance. That kind of mask is very expensive. Renting it once costs 10,000 Xian veins. Mad Dog's words made Yi Fei's face turn green. However, after seeing this strange invitation, Yi Fei gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, 10,000 it is. In any case, his life and death arena had made a huge profit, and he still had a lot of Xian veins left. Mad Dog didn't say anything. He just returned to the arena as fast as he could. Yi Fei then looked at Bai Shizhong. Brother Bai, I agree that you will go on my behalf. However, you must go on my appearance. Are you willing? Yi Fei, I was just joking. You didn't take it seriously, did you? Bai Shizhong shook his head helplessly. He felt that Yi Fei was making a mountain out of a molehill. Bai Yanran was a girl after all. She was more meticulous. She keenly realized that Yi Fei wasn't making a mountain out of a molehill. He was really suspicious of something. She couldn't help but ask doubtfully, Yi Fei, are you sure that there's something wrong with this invitation? I'm sure that this handwriting is Zhao Yu's. However, the tone is too polite. This is completely the tone of a stranger. With my relationship with Zhao Yu, she wouldn't use such a tone to invite me. Yi Fei was very certain. Bai Yanran was very surprised. Could it be that you're very familiar with Zhao Yu? Of course. I know more or less everything about Zhao Yu, Yi Fei said very frankly. Hearing this, Bai Shizhong almost choked to death on his own saliva. Why don't you just say that you and Zhao Yu are a couple? You can say that. Yi Fei spoke the truth. However, when he heard this, not only was Bai Shizhong dumbfounded, he was secretly impressed by Yi Fei's thick skin. Even Bai Yanran secretly spat. She felt that Yi Fei also liked to brag like this. Bai Shizhong changed his tone and said in a serious tone, Yi Fei, we're all men. It's okay to have some improper thoughts occasionally. However, it's not good to say it out loud like you did. Do you know that Zhao Yu is the dream goddess of all the young talents in the city of divine monarchs? It's fine if you brag in front of us, but if you dare to say it out loud, I guarantee that you won't live to see the next day. You'll be beaten to death in the gutter. Bai Shizhong's words were very sincere. Yi Fei was also very depressed when he heard this. Why was it that no one believed him when he spoke the truth? Could it be that he was really too honest? Yi Fei didn't bother to explain. He just threw the invitation to Bai Shizhong and said seriously, Brother Bai, you must be careful. If it's really Zhao Yu who invited me, then it's fine. However, if someone deliberately set a trap and you impersonated me, then you might be in danger. Yi Fei's serious expression didn't seem to be fake. Bai Shizhong suddenly felt that the invitation in his hand was burning hot. Yi Fei, I've thought about it. The gap between our realms is too big. Even if I impersonate you, it'll be easy for me to be exposed. Brother Bai, it's fine. You can totally say that I've made a breakthrough recently. Moreover, I'll let Blackie follow you. This way, no one will suspect you. Yi Fei directly pushed the dragon turtle beside him, who had eaten too much, towards Bai Shizhong. Bai Shizhong was extremely regretful. He shouldn't have suggested that he take Yi Fei's place to attend the appointment. However, he had no choice but to say it. Yi Fei also made such a serious request. Bai Shizhong could only suppress his frustration and hope that Yi Fei's speculation was completely wrong. That way, he would be able to deal a heavy blow to Yi Fei's image in Bai Yinran's mind. He wouldn't refuse. Not long after, Mad Dog also came back with a special mask that was as thin as a silkworm's wing. When Bai Shizhong put on this mask, his entire appearance immediately changed. Not only his appearance, but even his aura became exactly the same as Yi Fei's. However, this kind of mask also had a flaw. It couldn't hide one's realm. Bai Shizhong's realm was still that of a Dao Lord. Yi Fei thought about it and gritted his teeth. He gave the clear sky treasure mirror to Bai Shizhong. Only then was Bai Shizhong's realm hidden. In addition, the dragon turtle was following behind. At this moment, Yi Fei and Bai Shizhong stood together. As long as they didn't use martial arts, they would be inseparable. Yi Fei, let's make a deal. If your speculation is right this time, it's fine. But if you're wrong, you're not allowed to harass my sister in the future. Do you hear me? Before Bai Shizhong set off, he didn't forget to warn Yi Fei. Yi Fei was speechless. He just took Mad Dog and asked Bai Yinran to change into men's clothes. The three of them followed from a distance and walked towards the Heavenly Fragrance restaurant. I hope my speculation is wrong. Yi Fei sighed in his heart. After all, the handwriting on the invitation was exactly the same as Zhao Yu's. Chapter 2361. Spatial divine runes. The Heavenly Fragrance Tavern was filled to the brim. However, none of the guests were drinking. Instead, their gazes flickered as they stared outside the tavern. Ziyu's expression carried a trace of worry as she walked into the tavern. She looked at the two men who had been hiding inside. They were Du Chong and Yang Hao. In order to deal with Yi Fei, Yang Hao had already used his connections with the Yin Yang Palace to book the entire Heavenly Fragrance Tavern. The guests lingering in the tavern were all warriors from the Yin Yang Palace and Family Wang. Due to their deep enmity with Yi Fei, Family Wang had also sent out a large number of warriors to participate in this operation under Yang Hao's orders. However, Yang Hao was still a little worried. Even though the Heavenly Fragrance Tavern's preparations were complete, if Ziyu couldn't trick Yi Fei into coming in, their plan wouldn't succeed. Du Chong, are you certain that an invitation will be able to lure Yi Fei in? I'm sure. Although Yi Fei is strong, he has a huge weakness. That is, he has too many improper thoughts. It's fine if he has extravagant hopes for Zhao Yu, but he actually tried to pursue Ziyu. Now that Zhao Yu suddenly sent him an invitation personally, how could Yi Fei have any reason to refuse? Furthermore, in order to trick Yi Fei, I even spent a lot of money to prepare a generous gift for him. Du Chong clapped his hands. Suddenly, a woman in a red dress walked out from inside the Heavenly Fragrance Tavern. The woman was extraordinarily beautiful. She was like a fairy in the flames, a flower in the snow. Yang Hao's breathing immediately became hurried. Zhao Yu? No, you're not Zhao Yu. You're Ziyu. Yang Hao was surprised to see that the woman who walked out wasn't Zhao Yu, but Ziyu. At the same time, Ziyu was wearing a strange mask. It was actually very similar to the phantom mask that Mad Dog had brought back. Ziyu used this mask to transform into Zhao Yu's appearance. This made her feel uncomfortable and anxious. Senior Brother Du, is it really okay for us to do this? If Martial Uncle Zhao Yu finds out that I'm impersonating her, it'll be hard for me to explain myself. Ziyu, you don't have to explain. I promise you that today's matter will not be spread out. As long as you help me, I will be loyal to you from now on. Ziyu, are you willing to help me? Du Chong's tone suddenly became affectionate. Yang Hao felt a chill run down his spine. After observing Du Chong for a while, he vaguely realized that something was missing. However, Ziyu, who was immersed in Du Chong's sudden promise, did not notice Du Chong's absence. On the contrary, she quickly made up her mind. Under Du Chong's request, he put on the mask again and disguised himself as Zhao Yu before walking out of the Heavenly Fragrance restaurant. Outside the pavilion, a black-clothed figure followed by a bouncing black tortoise kept approaching. Within the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, Du Chong and Yang Hao's eyes flashed with hatred. Yi Fei really came. Ziyu, it's all up to you now, Du Chong said softly. However, his face was already twisted and ferocious. Ziyu did not notice this. She was completely immersed in Du Chong's promise. Although she felt that it was inappropriate to frame Yi Fei like this, when she thought of how Yi Fei had once ignored her in the Heavenly Lake ancient land, how could Ziyu not want to take revenge on Yi Fei? Naturally, a bewitching smile appeared on Ziyu's face. She once again transformed into Zhao Yu's appearance and walked out. Young Master Yi, you're really punctual. Ziyu imitated Zhao Yu's tone and nodded slightly. There was a shocking temptation in her coldness. Clearly, she knew how to release her charm very well. What made Du Chong and Yang Hao ecstatic was that in the face of Ziyu's temptation, Yi Fei almost immediately revealed a lecherous look. He immediately ran over and laughed. Fairy Zhao Yu has an appointment. Even if I have to climb a mountain of blades or dive into a sea of fire, I will still come on time. By the way, Fairy, may I ask what type of Dao companion you like? As he spoke, Du Chong and Yang Hao were even more flabbergasted. Yi Fei actually wanted to take the opportunity to touch Ziyu's hand. His actions were so vulgar that not only Du Chong and Yang Hao were dumbfounded, but even Yi Fei, who was following behind, nearly vomited blood on the spot. Bai Shizhong isn't such a frivolous person. He's clearly using my identity to ruin my reputation. In the beast mark space, Xiao Chao also withdrew his heaven-earth divine eye and began to wave his hand vigorously at Yi Fei. The phantom mask could deceive a cultivator's eyes, but it could not deceive Xiao Chao's divine eye. Xiao Chao quickly saw through Ziyu's identity. He hurriedly reminded Yi Fei. Yi Fei's heart sank. In fact, when he heard that Zhao Yu had not called him by his name, but by the unfamiliar young Master Yi, he vaguely had a bad feeling in his heart. At this moment, Xiao Chao's reminder had undoubtedly completely revealed that this appointment was a scam. As for who would use such a method to deal with him, a figure quickly appeared in Yi Fei's mind. Yang Hao. However, to be able to produce Zhao Yu's handwriting and get Ziyu to send me a letter, Yang Hao alone would not be able to do it. It must be Du Chong. Yi Fei's mind suddenly came to a realization. This trip to the Heavenly Fragrance House was not an invitation from Zhao Yu at all. It was a trap set up by Du Chong and Yang Hao to specifically target him. At the same time that he saw through Ziyu's identity, Xiao Chao also sensed that a large number of Dao Lord experts were hidden in the Heavenly Fragrance House. Bai Shizhong, quickly retreat. This is a trap. Yi Fei's hair stood on end. At this moment, he did not care about exposing his identity. He rushed forward as fast as he could and sent a voice transmission to Bai Shizhong. However, his voice transmission was still a step too late. Just as Bai Shizhong was pretending to be a pig and deliberately touching Ziyu, Bai Shizhong discovered that something unexpected had happened. What surprised Bai Shizhong was that Zhao Yu, who was said to be cold and aloof, wasn't angry. Instead, he lost his balance and fell towards Bai Shizhong. Why is this Zhao Yu different from the rumors? I just don't like Yi Fei, but this Zhao Yu actually took the initiative to stick to me? Bai Shizhong was astonished. Then, he felt a fragrant breeze. Ziyu's body fell on top of his. The moment the two of them collided, Ziyu quickly took out a purple jade talisman and slapped it on Bai Shizhong's body. The entire purple jade talisman instantly erupted with an intense purple light. This light condensed and formed a special divine inscription that was deeply imprinted on Bai Shizhong's chest. This is a spatial divine inscription seal. Who exactly are you? Bai Shizhong shouted. Although his spiritual attachment talent was not as good as Bai Yanran's, it was not to be underestimated. He quickly realized that this divine inscription was an extremely rare spatial divine inscription. It could directly seal space and sever all connections between him and the surrounding space. Yi Fei, don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself. You shouldn't be a nobody, and you shouldn't have opposed senior brother Du Chong. Ziyu quickly retreated and took off the illusion mask on her face. Chapter 2362. The Ghost Emperor Cauldron Shattered? Du Chong and Yang Hao were overjoyed to see Ziyu successfully imprint the spatial divine sigil on Yi Fei's body. Their eyes shone with a cruel and ferocious light. That's great. Demon Yu was blinded by lust and fell for Du Chong and Yang Hao's trap. He won't be able to escape this time. Family Wang's martial practitioners were all excited. Wang Yan's death in battle had not only implicated a large number of Family Wang's Lord of Heaven and Dao Lords, it had also directly affected Family Wang's influence in the city of divine monarchs. Therefore, Family Wang had spared no effort in dispatching martial practitioners to participate in this plot as soon as they had the chance to kill Yi Fei. They couldn't wait any longer and immediately charged out of the Sky Fragrance House. Dao Lords of Yinyang Palace also charged out. Du Chong and Yang Hao had arrogant looks on their faces as they strode out and shouted, "Yi Fei, you didn't expect this day to come, did you? Without the Ghost Emperor Cauldron, you are just an ant in our eyes. We can stomp you to death with a single step." "Stomp me to death?" Du Chong, Yang Hao, are you sure you have the ability to do so? Yi Fei charged over coldly from afar. There was no need for him to continue hiding after realizing that this was a trap. His appearance also stunned the martial practitioners of Family Wang and Yinyang Palace. Some of them even rubbed their eyes in disbelief. "We didn't see wrong. There are actually two Yi Feis here. What's going on? Why are there two demons with the surname Yi?" Du Chong and Yang Hao were also stunned by this unexpected outcome. Then, they all looked at Yi Fei, who was sealed by the spatial divine sigil. "Yi Fei, you win. I didn't expect this to really be a trap." Bai Shizhong took off his mask and retreated with a bitter smile. Du Chong and Yang Hao widened their eyes again. Zi was so angry that her face turned red. She had only managed to gather her courage with great difficulty to plot against Yi Fei. In the end, not only did Yi Fei fail, he fell into Bai Shizhong's arms and was taken advantage of. "Bai Shizhong, Yanran and I are friends. How dare you collude with Yi Fei and go against us?" Ziyue was both embarrassed and angry. "Ziyue, you still know that we are friends. How can you betray your friends like this? You've changed. You're no longer the Ziyue I used to know." Bai Yanran walked over, her eyes dim. Facing Bai Yanran, Ziyue's expression also flashed with guilt and shame. But when she thought of Du Chong behind her, and of Du Chong's promise to her, her expression became cold again. People change. However, I changed for Senior Brother Du, but you changed for an insignificant person like Yi Fei. Bai Yanran, from today onwards, we are no longer friends. Ziyue firmly believed that by doing this, she would be able to deepen her position in Du Chong's heart. For this, she didn't hesitate to completely abandon their friendship. Bai Yanran's dim eyes were filled with sorrow. Yi Fei also sighed and said softly, "A friendship that can be abandoned so easily is not worth it. Yang Hao, Du Chong, it's time for us to settle our grudges." Yi Fei didn't say anything. He just quickly took out the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. When they saw this, Du Chong and many other Family Wang's martial artists changed their expressions. Yang Hao's eyes turned ferocious at this moment. He suddenly laughed out loud and said, "Yi Fei, your and Bai Shizhong's acting is indeed realistic. Unfortunately, you can avoid Du Chong's sneak attack, but you can't avoid the open attack of the Yinyang Palace. What are you waiting for? Let's attack together and kill this demon and destroy that cauldron." Boom! Following Yang Hao's order, the dozen or so Dao Lords of the Yinyang Palace sneered and revealed their trump cards. Each of them had a spiritual enhancement weapon in their hands. They were all Tier 5 spiritual enhancement weapons that could unleash a Divine Lord attack. When they realized that Du Chong's sneak attack had been dodged by Yi Fei, these Dao Lords immediately activated their Dao Lord origins and lit up all the divine inscriptions on their spiritual enhancement weapons. Bai Shizhong's expression turned extremely solemn as he hurriedly shouted, "Oh no, we have to retreat. All of you retreat. Today, I must kill Yang Hao and Du Chong." Yi Fei's anger erupted like a volcano. "They can deal with me, but they shouldn't have used Zhao Yu to plot against me. Since they did it, they must pay the price in blood. Kill!" Yi Fei roared. The moment the Dao Lords of the Yinyang Palace launched their Divine Lord attacks, he stepped on the Ghost Emperor Cauldron and used the Azure Dragon wings. His target wasn't the Dao Lords, but Yang Hao and Du Chong. "You're courting death." Yang Hao and Du Chong were both enraged. They didn't attack. Instead, they quickly retreated. The Dao Lords of the Yin Yang Palace sneered and released their spiritual enhancement weapons. Then, countless beams of Divine Lord light shattered the surrounding void and even shattered the sky fragrance inn, the #1 inn in the city of divine monarchs. Even the entire street was turned into ruins by the dozen beams of Divine Lord light. Bai Shizhong's expression changed. Even if he was ranked on the Earth Carnage roll, he couldn't withstand such a terrifying Divine Lord attack. Yi Fei naturally couldn't withstand it. However, Yi Fei didn't retreat. Instead, he continued to charge forward and kill the Dao Lords who had activated their divine inscriptions. At the same time, the Ghost Emperor Cauldron under his feet suddenly emitted a blazing light. It was like a ghastly mouth that swallowed him into the cauldron. The entire Ghost Emperor Cauldron started to tremble violently. Countless cracks appeared on it from the impact of the Divine Lord light. This was Yang Hao's plan. Du Chong only wanted to plot against Yi Fei. However, Yang had been thinking about how to shatter the Ghost Emperor Cauldron from the start. Therefore, he had endured for nearly a month and spent all his savings to gather these dozen spiritual enhancement weapons. He had unleashed a Divine Lord attack in an attempt to kill Yi Fei. "Yi Fei, I don't believe that your Ghost Emperor Cauldron can withstand so many Divine Lord attacks." "Kill." Yang Hao suddenly made his move. He executed the sky, overturning Yin Yang's seal. The entire void was filled with seal techniques that blasted forward. Divine Monarch Chaos. Du Chong sneered. At this moment, he had transformed into a Divine Monarch again. He condensed a flaming Divine Saber and slashed the void. Just as the Ghost Emperor Cauldron couldn't withstand the Divine Lord light and shattered, Du Chong's saber was already slashing fiercely at Yi Fei's head. "Yimo, not only do I want you dead, but I also want to take over your body." Du Chong's eyes flashed with a shocking cold light. Seeing the Ghost Emperor Cauldron shatter, Family Wang's martial artists were even more agitated. The cauldron has shattered. Yi Fei no longer has anything to rely on. Today will be the day he dies. "Kill." The Wang family's martial artists attacked one after another, charging towards Yi Fei. They surrounded Yi Fei from all sides. A cold smile appeared on Yi Fei's face. This scene was very similar to the one in the core world. Back then, he had also been like this. When had he ever been afraid of being surrounded? Chapter 2363. Chaotic Battle. Yi Fei's hand touched his spatial belt. Instantly, a black iron-heavy sword that was burning with divine inscriptions appeared in his hand. He slashed out once again. The entire sky was filled with endless sword light. Suddenly, he slashed at the neck of a Dao Lord from the Yin Yang Palace. The Dao Lord wanted to dodge, but Yi Fei was too fast. His figure flashed as he charged into the distance. Behind him was a headless Dao Lord's corpse. Yang Hao's furious roar could be heard. Another Dao Lord of the Yin Yang Palace had died right under his nose. "I'll stop him." Du Chong also roared. Suddenly, wolf wings sprouted from his body, giving him incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, he caught up to Yi Fei. His flaming saber whistled through the air as he attempted to sever Yi Fei's head. However, Yi Fei's body suddenly erupted with purplish gold light. It was no longer the golden body of laws, but the golden body of despair. After obtaining the complete Dao Lord and Divine Lord level golden body of despair, Yi Fei's Lord of Heaven level golden body of laws had also undergone a transformation. Moreover, Yi Fei had broken through to the late-stage Lord of Heaven level. This allowed the golden body of despair to withstand the attack of a late-stage Dao Lord. On the other hand, Du Chong's cultivation level had decreased after he connected with Wang Xiu's body. He was now only at the mid-stage Lord of Heaven level. Even if Du Chong's natural mystique was powerful and could unleash the combat strength of a Dao Lord at the mid-stage Lord of Heaven level, he could only unleash the combat strength of a mid-stage Dao Lord at most. Therefore, Du Chong's expression turned ugly when he realized that not only was a sure kill attack unable to break through Yi Fei's golden body, but Yi Fei had also cleverly used the power of the divine blade to charge at the two Dao lords from the Yin Yang Palace at an even faster speed. Kill! The whistling sword light of death brushed past them. The two early-stage Dao lords from the Yin Yang Palace widened their eyes in shock. The light of the life-killing sword beheaded them. Du Chong was enraged. Yang Hao roared in rage. This time, they had set up a trap to kill Yi Fei. But not only had they failed, they had even allowed Yi Fei to kill 3 Dao lords. Du Chong, lend me your speed. Let's combine and kill Yi Fei. Yang Hao charged over from afar and suddenly stepped on Du Chong's shoulders. Du Chong was enraged. Yang Hao's so-called fusion was to step on him and use him as a special mount to deal with Yi Fei. Du Chong was about to flip out on the spot, but Yang Hao's cold voice immediately entered his ears. Du Chong, you seem to have become a eunuch? You probably don't want this matter to spread, especially to your junior sister Ziyu. Did it reach your ears? Yang Hao had obviously discovered Du Chong's secret. Du Chong's furious expression immediately changed. It was a kind of humiliation, anger, and madness. Du Chong let out a howl like an injured wolf king. At this moment, his entire body suddenly transformed into a crazy wolf. He brought Yang Hao and instantly approached Yi Fei again. At this moment, Yi Fei had just used the advantage of the speed of the Azure Dragon wings to kill 2 Dao lords of the Yin Yang Palace in one breath. At this moment, he sensed 2 extremely ferocious auras approaching. Looking back, he saw that Du Chong was actually willing to become a mount and let Yang Hao step on him to kill him. However, Yang Hao's method really caught Yi Fei off guard. Yang Hao's combat strength and Du Chong's speed combined to suddenly erupt with the most terrifying power. Yin Yang Great Rotation. Yang Hao's expression was solemn. He stepped on Du Chong and formed a Yin Yang seal with both hands. The entire void was suddenly controlled by mysterious power. Heaven and earth were inverted, and Yin and Yang were reversed. Yi Fei's entire body flipped upside down and kept rolling. Even the golden body of despair was squeezed until it exploded. The other Dao lords of the Yin Yang Palace cheered in ecstasy. They used their divine abilities and attacked Yi Fei again. Roar! Not far away, the angry roar of the dragon turtle could be heard. On the dragon turtle, Bai Shizhong's fighting spirit was boiling. Although he was sealed by the spatial divine runes and couldn't open the spatial belt or even fly, he still had the combat strength of a Dao Lord and his martial divine abilities. Inspired by Du Chong and Yang Hao, Bai Shizhong also stood on the dragon turtle and blocked the Dao Lords of the Yin Yang Palace. Although I don't like Yi Fei, he's still a member of the Heavenly Palace of Despair. How can I let the Yin Yang Palace kill him? Bai Shizhong snorted coldly and subconsciously looked into the distance. There, Mad Dog had already gone crazy and was fighting Family Wang's martial artist with his life. Knowing that Mad Dog had the deathmatch arena behind him, Family Wang's martial artist didn't dare to kill him at all. They were all blocked by Mad Dog alone and couldn't get close to Yi Fei. On the ground, Bai Yanran and Ziyu looked at each other from afar. Their gazes were complicated. Ziyu, why are you doing this? What good will it do you to deal with Yi Fei? Bai Yanran couldn't accept that his former good friend had turned out this way. As long as I kill Yi Fei, senior brother Du will fall in love with me and marry me in the future. However, Bai Yanran, you really don't have good taste. There are so many young talents in the city of divine monarchs, and all of them are stronger than Yi Fei. Why did you choose a country bumpkin from Qingzhou? Since they had already fallen out, Ziyu wouldn't hold back. Not only did she mock Bai Yanran, but she also despised Yi Fei. Bai Yanran's dim eyes were filled with a strange light. It wasn't anger, but the coldness of facing a stranger. I'm too naive. Ziyu, if you want to deal with Yi Fei, you'll have to get through me first. A soul cauldron appeared in Bai Yanran's hand. It wasn't the Ghost Emperor cauldron, nor was it the Taiji Sword cauldron. It was an innate Shun pattern cauldron that Bai Yanran had formed according to her own condition. Her soul cauldron was the innate Shun pattern that she possessed. When she threw the cauldron, the shun pattern automatically absorbed the power of heaven and earth and smashed towards Ziyu like a comet. Ziyu sneered. Intense flames appeared on her body and formed countless fireballs that circled around her. She showed no mercy and collided with by Yinran's shun pattern cauldron. The two women began to fight fiercely on the ground. High up in the sky, Yi Fei's face was cold. Just as his body was hanging upside down, he had already activated his natural mystique and released an endless amount of withered sword light. This sword light could cause his opponent's mystique to wither and be unable to continue. The upside-down heaven and earth also returned to normal in an instant. Yang Hao's face was immediately filled with shock. What kind of bloodline do you have? How can you have two natural mystiques? What? Two natural mystiques? Du Chang's face was also filled with shock. Then, intense jealousy and anger filled his mind. Who cares how many mystiques he has? If it weren't for him, how could I, Du Chang, be in this state? I've even been caught and trampled underfoot. This EMO must die. Roar. Chapter 2364. Killing Yang Hao, however, a beam of sword light suddenly split the sea of fire. The flames disappeared, and the entire sky was flooded by a sea of blood. It was the light of the sword of slaughter. Once the sword was out, all life would fall and ghosts would be destroyed. The sea of blood covered the sky and swallowed Du Chong and Yang Hao, who was standing on Du Chong. This scene shocked the Dao lords of the Yin Yang Palace. They had always thought that Yi Fei was only relying on the Ghost Emperor Cauldron to fight above his level and ignore them. However, after 5 Dao lords died in succession and Du Chong and Yang Hao's mystiques were broken one after another, many people realized that Yi Fei's combat strength was still terrifying even without the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Yi Fei, congratulations. You've successfully infuriated me. Yang Hao's cold voice suddenly came from the sea of blood. Then, the sea of blood surged and the void exploded. Yang Hao once again stepped on Du Chong and charged out of the sea of blood. At the same time, another beam of terrifying Yin-Yang divine light slashed at Yi Fei. It's actually the Yin-Yang divine light. Rumor has it that only divine lords can fully use this ability. If one isn't a divine lord, several Dao lords would need to work together to use it. Yang Hao can actually use it by himself? Bai Shizhong's expression became extremely serious. Although Yang Hao's Yin-Yang divine light was very blurry, it was still a divine lord mystique. As long as it was used, its power would definitely be stronger than other mystiques. Bai Yinran couldn't help but look at Yi Fei with a worried expression. Stop looking. He's dead for sure. He's a lone cultivator with no one to rely on. I really don't understand where he got the courage to offend senior brother Du in the Yin-Yang Palace. Ziyu said sarcastically. In her opinion, Yi Fei and Du Chong were very stupid to go against Yang Hao. However, Ziyu's words couldn't shake Yi Fei's determination to kill Yang Hao. He couldn't tolerate Du Chong and Yang Hao using Zhao Yu to trick him. Even though Yang Hao had already used a divine lord mystique, Yi Fei was still fearless. Not only that, he suddenly took a big step forward. Cauldron come! Yi Fei shouted coldly. Suddenly, sword light spread out behind him, forming a strange Taiji sword cauldron. On the body of the cauldron, there was a door of 8 trigrams. It was as if 8 blurry worlds were stacked together. All of a sudden, Yi Fei walked into the 8 trigrams door. Another identical Taiji sword cauldron appeared in his hand. The 9 cauldrons heaven-suppressing incantation is divided into 3 volumes, and each volume can create 3 soul cauldrons. Du Chong, didn't you want the Heaven Ghoul tribe's inheritance? I'll give it to you now. Cauldron extermination. Boom. The 2 sword cauldrons were activated by Yi Fei at the same time. One blocked Yang Hao's Yin-Yang divine light, while the other quickly smashed towards Du Chong, who had been reduced to a mound. However, Du Chong didn't feel anything. He even forgot to resist. In his mind, the Heaven Ghoul tribe's inheritance that he couldn't master even after a month of hard work, and the 9 cauldrons heaven-suppressing incantation that Yi Fei had used surfaced. Suddenly, Du Chong came to a realization. Why was it that with his talent, not only was he unable to master the Heaven Ghoul race's remarkable abilities after painstakingly cultivating for a month, even understanding it was difficult. After all this time, that scroll was actually a fake, and the remarkable abilities inside were also fabricated by Yi Fei. He had been fooled by Yi Fei once again. Roar! The immense rage made Du Chong let out a sound that was even more terrifying than a wolf's. In his rage, he even forgot that Yang Hao was still stepping on his body. Instead, he directly broke free from Yang Hao's suppression and brandished his blazing divine blade to kill Yi Fei. Come over. Yimo, you'll die a horrible death. Du Chong was so angry that he spat out blood on the spot. He was like an enraged divine king as he brandished the flaming divine saber and slashed at the sword cauldron. However, what shocked Du Chong was that his strongest flaming divine saber couldn't shatter the sword cauldron. Instead, the sword cauldron that was under attack suddenly flashed with sword light and shattered the void. It almost pierced Du Chong's body full of holes. Yi Fei's target wasn't Du Chong. After using the sword cauldron to successfully separate Du Chong from Yang Hao, Yi Fei personally controlled the other sword cauldron to attack Yang Hao. In midair, the black iron heavy sword in his hand slashed out like a comet. The thick sea of blood dissipated. The resplendent sword light suddenly pierced through the sky like a meteor and slashed towards the divine light. Yang Hao was shocked to find that his yin-yang divine light was like ice meeting fire. His mystique instantly withered and dissipated. As for Yi Fei's sword cauldron, it had already passed through the void and was smashing towards him. Yang Hao's expression suddenly turned ferocious. He didn't retreat. Instead, he suddenly ignited his bloodline and formed a layer of special armor to protect himself. Yin-yang divine armor. This is my natural mystique. Yi Fei, you don't have the ability to kill me. Yang Hao was completely covered by the armor. Surging yin-yang qi rushed towards the Taiji sword cauldron like a boiling river. Yi Fei was shocked to find that his sword cauldron actually showed signs of trembling and collapsing under the impact of the yin-yang qi. Will of bloody battle massacre. At the critical moment, Yi Fei suddenly rushed out of the 8 trigrams door. The light of desolation that filled the sky once again turned into the sword light of death. The surging sea of blood gathered into a terrifying sword of bloody sea. Yi Fei raised it and slashed towards the river of yin-yang. At the same time, Yi Fei shouted again, "Cauldron, come!" Boom! On the ground, the shattered pieces of the Ghost Emperor Cauldron suddenly reassembled on their own, reforming into a damaged Ghost Emperor Cauldron. It suddenly flew into the sky and landed in Yi Fei's hand. This scene was completely out of Yang Hao and Du Chong's expectations. Even Bai Yanran and Bai Shizhong were shocked. Only Yi Fei wasn't surprised. After all, the Ghost Emperor Cauldron was the sole cauldron of the ancient emperor. Since it could be repaired, it could naturally be reformed. No one other than the ancient emperor could break it. Thanks to Li Moran, Yi Fei had discovered this secret. Therefore, when facing the Tao Lord of the Yin-Yang Palace, who had used the spiritual attachment weapon to release a Divine Lord attack, Yi Fei had deliberately broken the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. He had also successfully paralyzed Du Chong and Yang Hao so that they could boldly charge forward to attack and kill him. At the same time, Yi Fei also used all his strength to activate the 9 Cauldron Heaven Suppressing Art at the most critical moment. The broken Ghost Emperor Cauldron reassembled and smashed forward again. Yang Hao was horrified to see that his river of yin-yang had been broken by the reassembled Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Without the support of the yin-yang qi, the light of the yin-yang divine armor on his body quickly dimmed. At this moment, Yi Fei's Sword of Massacre had already arrived with the Sword of Death formed from the sea of blood, piercing towards Yang Hao's throat. Du Chong, you idiot! You've been castrated and your brain is turned into a pig. Yang Hao roared in fear. He used all his strength to resist the Ghost Emperor Cauldron's attack. However, even though he was the young master of the Yin-Yang Palace and had a 9th grade bloodline, his cultivation level was still too low. Even a Divine Lord couldn't destroy the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. How could Yang Hao resist it? All he could do was curse and curse crazily before he died. After all, if Du Cheng hadn't been provoked by Yi Fei and abandoned him, he wouldn't have encountered Yi Fei alone. Even if they had met, he was confident that he could take Du Cheng's place and die for him. The cruel thing was that Du Cheng didn't come to save him at all. The Tao Lord of the Yin Yang Palace couldn't save him in time either. In the end, Yang Hao could only watch in despair as a black cauldron emitted a strong light and shattered his body, destroying his Heaven Palace Fate Wheel and Sky Bridge. Chapter 2365. Li Moran makes a move boom. After swallowing Yang Hao's soul, the broken Ghost Emperor Cauldron actually emitted an even stronger glow. At the same time, the broken Ghost Gate actually reappeared at this moment, but its glow was much dimmer. After all, the Ghost Emperor Cauldron had suffered a Divine Lord's attack from the self-destruction of more than 10 spiritual attachments. Although such an attack wasn't enough to shatter the Ghost Emperor Cauldron, it was still severely damaged. It was also this damage that made Yi Fei unable to activate the strongest Ghost Gate, even though he could condense the Ghost Emperor Soul Cauldron. What was amazing was that after the Ghost Emperor Cauldron killed Yang Hao and devoured his bloodline and soul, not only did the broken Ghost Emperor Soul Cauldron become brighter, even the Ghost Gate that couldn't be activated was restored. This gave Yi Fei an extremely bold idea. Could it be that besides cultivating the 9 Cauldron Heaven suppressing art, I can also use the Ghost Emperor Cauldron to kill strong enemies and devour their bloodline and soul to quickly repair the Ghost Emperor Cauldron? Yi Fei was faintly excited. When he recalled the Ghost Emperor Cauldron, he was actually stunned for a moment. In a battle between experts, such a daze was where the flaw was. However, due to Yang Hao's sudden death, whether it was the Tao Lords of the Yin Yang Palace or the martial artists of the family Wang, all of them were extremely shocked. At this moment, no one dared to take the opportunity to attack Yi Fei. Instead, they all stared blankly at the place where the Ghost Emperor Cauldron had smashed down, at the terrifying pool of blood. It was Yang Hao's blood. This young master of the Yin Yang Palace, who was good at scheming, didn't use his scheme to kill Yi Fei in the end. Instead, he died under his own scheme. It had to be said that this was a kind of irony. The remaining Tao Lords of the Yin Yang Palace felt like they had been slapped in the face. In Green Province, Yang Ming led 10 Tao Lords to hunt down Yi Fei, who had just broken through to the Lord of Heaven. In the end, they were all wiped out and died in Green Province. In the City of Divine Kings, Yang Hao had led them to kill Yi Fei. In the end, not only had a Divine Lord died in battle, even Yang Hao had been killed by Yi Fei. Furthermore, this time, the Yin Yang Palace's losses were especially disastrous. It was so disastrous that they didn't even know how to return and explain it to the Yin Yang Palace's upper echelons. Young master, you died so tragically. What are you waiting for? The young master of the Yin Yang Palace has never been killed by an outsider. What's more, the person who killed the young master is a rogue cultivator, a damn trash. Kill him, or else none of us will live. From the ruins of Heavenly Fragrance Hall, a grizzled old man rushed out. This was a half-step Divine Lord that had once followed Yang Hao. Because of Xuetu's warning, the half-step Divine Lord powerhouses and above didn't dare to attack Yi Fei. Instead, they chose to observe from a distance with their divine sense. Moreover, in order to kill Yi Fei, Du Cheng and Yang Hao had joined forces. How could the half-step Divine Lord Old Man have imagined that such an accident would occur? Yang Hao had actually been killed by Yi Fei. As the half-step Divine Lord Old Man rushed over, hatred and anger erupted from his body. The implications of Yang Hao's death were far too great. If he didn't kill Yi Fei, he wouldn't be able to explain himself to the upper echelons of Yin Yang Palace. In his rage, the half-step Divine Lord Old Man finally decided to take the risk. He would rather ignore Xuetu's warning and kill Yi Fei. Kill! The half-step Divine Lord Old Man crazily rushed forwards. A massive yin-yang heaven-flipping palm turned the skies black and white as it ruthlessly came crashing down on Yi Fei. Dang! Yi Fei lifted his cauldron to block. But he discovered that the Ghost Emperor Cauldron was unable to block the supernatural powers of the half-step divine Lord Old Man. Cracks began to appear on its surface once more, and even the newly repaired ghost gate began to tremble, its light flickering. Yifei's complexion paled. This is bad. The Ghost Emperor Cauldron shattered just now. Even though it has been reformed, its strength has begun to decline. The severely damaged Ghost Emperor Cauldron will find it difficult to block the attacks of a half-step Divine Lord. Understanding this, Yifei no longer dared to be careless. Although he hadn't been able to kill Du Chong in this battle, he had still managed to kill Yang Hao. This was enough for him. Yifei decisively stopped. As the Ghost Emperor Cauldron floated above his head to resist the descending yin-yang heaven-flipping palm, he released the azure dragon wings and shot into the distance. Bai Yinran, Jifo, let's go. Hearing this, Bai Shizhong was enraged. Surname Yi, you have no conscience. If it weren't for me blocking these Dao Lords, would you have been able to kill Yang Hao? You didn't even call out to me when you fled. But soon, Bai Shizhong realized that he had wronged Yifei. Before Mad Dog and Bai Yinran could react, the dragon turtle had already landed on the ground. As it bit Bai Shizhong, its round body had already rolled into the distance like a wheel. The speed at which it rolled was definitely faster than a wheel. Bai Shizhong was dumbfounded to discover that he and the dragon turtle were the fastest to escape. Yifei had just called out to them when the dragon turtle had already rolled out of sight. Even Bai Yinran was stunned. Then, she felt a whistling figure rushing over. Without even looking at Purple Moon on the ground, Yifei grabbed Bai Yinran and rushed into the distance. Behind him was the silent Mad Dog. Boom! The half-step Divine Lord Elder's yin-yang heaven-flipping palm finally landed. Yifei and the other two narrowly avoided the attack range of the heaven-flipping palm. There was a huge palm print on the ground that had turned the entire sky fragrance into nothingness. The half-step Divine Lord's furious roar reverberated in the sky. You bunch of trash. Why didn't you stop them? Du Chong, you may not have a lower body, but are you scared out of your wits? In the end, the half-step Divine Lord Elder vented his anger on Du Chong. He even exposed Du Chong's greatest secret on the spot. Du Chong was so angry that he shrieked like a demon. Purple Moon even forgot to stop Yifei for a moment. She lifted her head in disbelief and looked at Du Chong in the sky. What? Senior Brother Du, how could he be a castrate? This can't be true. This can't be true. She thought back to Du Chong's sweet words and promises. In order to make Du Chong love her wholeheartedly, she hadn't hesitated to betray Zhao Yu and cooperate with Du Chong to plot against Yifei. She had even fallen out with Bai Yinran and severed all ties with her. In the end, fate had played a huge joke on her. Du Chong was actually not a man. Then, Du Chong's confession of love and sweet words to her. Had he only been using her? Du Chong, for you, I gave up everything. But in the end, you lied to me. Purple Moon shed tears of regret, but she couldn't take back everything she had lost. Chong, or it looks like after experiencing the impact of the core world, not only has your body been crippled, but your heart has also been crippled. Your master is really disappointed in you. Suddenly, another faint voice echoed through the void. The one who had appeared was none other than the elder of the Divine King Palace, Limoran. Chapter 2366. When I become a dragon, I didn't expect that there would be a time when I misjudged something. This cauldron is indeed extraordinary. It's worthy of being a treasure left behind by the Emperor of the Ancients. Limoran did not hide his greed for the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. After all, when Yifei obtained the Ghost Emperor Cauldron and returned to Lord Pan's palace, Limoran had attempted to snatch it from Lord Pan's palace. However, due to Shui Tu's obstruction and Lord Pan's hidden strength, Limoran was unable to successfully snatch the Ghost Emperor Cauldron from Lord Pan. That said, he had used a little trick, and that was to forcibly leave a crack on the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Since Limoran couldn't get it, then no one else could. However, what Limoran did not expect was that the Ghost Emperor Cauldron, which he thought had been destroyed, was actually so extraordinary. Not only did it repair the cracks on his body, but it was also able to reform itself after being shattered. Li Moran was shocked. Even the Rinzhu weapons stored in the palace of the King of Gods could not be restored after being destroyed. This also ignited Li Moran's ambition and greed once again. He immediately changed his original intentions, going from watching with interest to personally rushing over from the Divine King's palace and blocking Yifei's path. Yifei's expression immediately darkened. Du Chang's heart, however, was filled with ecstasy. He cried out sharply, "Master, kill him. Kill him, and my state of mind will recover. I will definitely become the same as before and satisfy you." Chong'er, you're too naive. It's hard for a person to make progress, but it's easy for him to fall. Yifei, you are not bad. To be able to leave Azure Prefecture and come to the city of divine monarchs as an itinerant cultivator proves your perseverance. Despite being surrounded by enemies, you managed to kill Yang Hao, proving your talent. It's a pity that someone like you is wandering outside. Are you willing to join the palace of the Divine King and take me as your master? Li Moran looked at Yifei with a trace of admiration in his eyes. However, Yifei could clearly sense that Li Moran and many others were actually looking at the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. This person's goal was too obvious. Yifei immediately shook his head and mocked. Li Moran, you are too hypocritical. If you want to steal my Ghost Emperor Cauldron, just say it. What do you mean by accepting me as your disciple? You just don't want to be cursed for stealing a junior's treasure, and you also want to shut the mouths of Senior Shuetu and Panwan. If I take you as my master, not only will I not be able to keep this cauldron, I'm afraid I won't be able to keep my life. Boom! Yifei's words were like a clap of thunder, causing all the warriors present to reveal expressions of fear and shock. Not only had Yifei rejected a divine lord, but he had also exposed Li Moran's hidden hypocrisy. Could it be that this kid has gone mad? The cultivators of the Wang family all sucked in a breath of cold air. Li Moran's hypocrisy had long been rumored in the city of divine kings. However, knowing was one thing. No one dared to say it out loud. This was because Li Moran was a divine lord. This EMO is really digging his own grave this time. It seems like we don't have to do anything. Li Moran can crush this demon into pieces. The half-step divine lord elder of the Yin-Yang Palace sneered and took the lead to retreat into the distance. He also expressed to Li Moran that the Yin-Yang Palace had no intention of fighting for the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Du Chang's expression was ugly, and Ziyu's expression was even more complicated. The only ones who looked normal were Yifei and Li Moran. Yifei was very calm, and Li Moran was even more so. He was not angry at all in the face of sarcasm. Li Moran said with a smile, "Yifei, you are indeed a smart person. Unfortunately, you do not know how to adapt to circumstances, nor do you know how to appreciate favors. Do you still remember the story of the fish and the dragon that I told you before?" Yifei did not answer. Li Moran spoke with confidence and composure. No matter how strong the fish in the ditch is, no matter how hard it works, it can never change the fact that it is a small fish. Perhaps it can rely on its hard work to enter a pond, enter a river, and become a tyrant. However, once it enters the sea, it will never be able to escape the fate of being drowned by the sea. This story tells us that a small fish will always be a small fish, even if it enters the sea, even if it thinks that it has made a comeback. Boom! A fiery light suddenly appeared in the sky. It was Li Moran. The figure that condensed the flaming divine saber had a smile on his face. As he told the story, the gigantic flaming divine saber was like a divine king descending, cleaving apart the heavens and earth. At this moment, it was as if the entire sky above the city of divine kings had been destroyed by the flaming divine saber, and it was slowly cleaving down on the city of divine kings. Wah! Just by sensing the aura of the divine saber, many cultivators of family Wang felt their blood boil as they frantically retreated into the distance. Yifei's expression was extremely serious. He suddenly exerted force and pushed Bai Yanran towards Mad Dog. "Big brother Ji-Feng, take Bai Yanran away. I'll bring up the rear. I'm not Ji-Feng. I'm Mad Dog. In my world, there is only madness and battle. Mad Dog did not leave. Instead, he narrowed his eyes, and a frenzied mystique will emerge from his body to resist the aura of the flaming divine saber. Bai Yinran also shouted at this moment. She condensed the innate divine pattern cauldron and blocked the divine saber with Yi Fei's Ghost Emperor cauldron. I can't leave. Pan Wang once said that if a friend is in trouble and does not save him, it is dishonorable. Although I am a woman, I know where loyalty lies. I will die without regret. Bai Yinran's gaze was resolute. In the core world, Yi Fei did not hesitate to jump into the fire eye to save her. Now that Yi Fei was in trouble, how could she leave alone? Not only her, but even further away, the dragon turtle, who had disappeared after rolling away, suddenly roared and rushed over. It even spat Bai Shizhong, who was still in its mouth, towards them. Bai Shizhong cursed the dragon turtle for being a good-for-nothing. It could have escaped, but it threw him back to die. However, the moment it threw him over, Bai Shizhong had already unleashed all his cultivation and punched towards the sky. Then Bai Yinran, Mad Dog, the dragon turtle, and even Xiao Qiao, who was hiding in the beastmark space, secretly attacked. They waved a five-colored spiritual wind towards the sky. Seeing everyone so united, Yi Fei could not help but feel a surge of warmth in his heart. Then, a strong fighting spirit emerged from Yi Fei's body like a raging fire and a raging wave. So what if you are a divine lord? Limoran, just you wait. The day I turn into a dragon will be the day you die. Ghost Emperor Cauldron, kill him. Boom! Following Yi Fei's angry roar, the entire Ghost Emperor Cauldron suddenly shone brightly. Then, Yi Fei's body stepped onto the Soul Cauldron and entered the Ghost Gate. In his hand, the black iron heavy sword shone with a dazzling sword light. Behind him, the two Taiji sword cauldrons whistled with a dazzling light. Roar! The dragon turtle in the distance suddenly became as heavy as a mountain and charged towards them. Under the fiery light that filled the sky, the dragon turtle's black tortoise dragon shell shone brightly. Its huge black mouth was like a volcano, spewing out endless demonic flames that blasted towards the sky. However, the dragon turtle's demonic flames did not have any effect. After all, the dragon turtle's realm was still too low. Bai Shizhong's fist radiance and Bai Yinran's Khanate God Cauldron were also unable to block the flaming divine saber. However, Mad Dog, who was in a frenzy, had a layer of strange silver light appear on his body, temporarily blocking a portion of the flaming divine saber's power. Chapter 2367. Big Dipper bloody hand wherever the divine saber went, the one in charge would be swept away. Although the Ghost Emperor Cauldron was the ancient Emperor's Soul Cauldron, it was a pity that it was too broken and Yi Fei's cultivation level was too low. There was a gap of 2 levels between the Lord of Heaven and a Divine Lord, which was enough to crush any genius. Yi Fei saw the Ghost Emperor Cauldron let out a cry. It was shattered by Li Moran again. Boom! The divine saber continued to descend. In the sky, there were flames everywhere. Li Moran stood in the sky that had turned into flames. He was like a ruthless deity who had sent down a calamity of fire to kill Yi Fei. Only by killing Yi Fei could he truly obtain the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Yi Fei's heart suddenly tightened. This was the second time he had felt such a cold killing intent from Li Moran. This killing intent was enough to make any Lord of Heaven tremble in fear. But in Yi Fei's heart, besides fear, there was more anger. Endless anger and endless fighting spirit. I can die, but I definitely can't die in the hands of a hypocrite like him. Even if I die, I will fight to the end. Golden body of despair, burn for me. Without the Ghost Emperor Cauldron, he still had the golden body of despair. Without the golden body, he still had the Taiji sword cauldron. Without the sword cauldron, he still had the sword of slaughter and the sword of desolation. Even if all these divine powers weren't enough to ward off the deadly fiery divine saber in midair, he still had the will of the bloody battle, Bai Shizhong, Bai Yinran, and the Mad Dog, his friends who had fought side by side with him, as well as Xiao Qiao and the Dragon Turtle, who had gone through thick and thin with him. I want to fight. Yi Fei let out a godlike roar. Facing the flaming divine blade that was almost certain to kill him, he would not retreat. He raised the black iron-heavy sword, and all the energy in his body erupted like a volcano. Yi Fei, you've really gone mad. Bai Shizhong's expression changed greatly. His face was filled with depression and anger. Originally, I could have escaped. It's all that black tortoise's fault. Not only did it come back to die, it even dragged me to die with it. Despite his words, intense divine rune will and bloodline divine flame emerged from Bai Yanran's body. The innate divine rune cauldron in his hand condensed again, releasing even more innate divine light that blasted forward. Under the stimulation of death, Mad Dog suddenly went crazy. His red eyes suddenly turned into a special silver color. For some unknown reason, a silver pillar of light burst out from his body. This pillar of light actually blocked the flaming divine blade for a short period of time. Do it. Life or death. It all depends on this one move. Of course, Yi Fei would not let such a good opportunity slip by. He used all his mystiques and took the lead to attack the Divine Lord's blade. Bai Yanran and Bai Shizhong followed closely behind, coordinating with Yi Fei's attacks. However, the moment the divine blade clashed with the mystiques, the entire ground sank by dozens of meters, turning into a huge basin. In the basin, Yi Fei's golden body shattered. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Suddenly, it was as if a heavy mountain had fallen on top of him. Half of his body sank into the ground. Barf. Not far away, Bai Shizhong also spat out blood. He was pressed to the ground by the impact of the divine blade. Bai Yanran's innate divine rune cauldron was completely shattered. His face was pale as he flew backward. The dragon tortoise hurried over. Its huge body became even bigger as it stood in front of everyone. However, the dragon tortoise's realm was too low. Even the aftermath of the divine blade's shattering made the dragon tortoise groan. Its black tortoise dragon armor shattered with a loud bang. Its entire body was flipped over by the airflow and fell to the ground. However, with its round body, the dragon tortoise did not suffer any serious injuries. The moment it flipped over, it pressed Mad Dog and Bai Shizhong to the ground at the same time, immobilizing them. The two of them spat out blood and were extremely depressed. The warriors of Family Wang and the Taoist lords of Yinyang Palace who were watching the battle widened their eyes in shock. What did they see? These few juniors and a fat dragon tortoise had actually shattered the Divine Lord's sure-kill attack. The two of them subconsciously raised their heads and looked at the sky. They saw Li Moran's calm expression in the sky. At this moment, he revealed a bright smile. Seeing this smile, Du Chong felt a chill run down his spine. As Li Moran's disciple, he naturally knew that the brighter Li Moran's smile was, the more it showed the anger in his heart. You guys are very good. Unfortunately, all of you are still too young and don't know what's good for you. Li Moran smiled and stretched out his hand. All the divine flames in the sky were suddenly gathered by him, forming an even bigger and stronger divine saber of heaven and earth. It fell coldly again. This time, he would not give these people any chance to breathe. It's over. We're dead for sure this time. Bai Shizhong's face was filled with despair. Mad Dog was also awakened from his madness by the aura of the divine saber of heaven and earth. Bai Yanran smiled bitterly. The dragon tortoise also opened its mouth nervously and continued to spit out large mouthfuls of demonic flames. Yi Fei shook his head gloomily. It's useless. The gap between our realms is too big. If we stay, we'll just be waiting for death. Blackie, take them and leave quickly. Bam! Yi Fei kicked the ground in front of him fiercely, causing the ground to crack and a huge gully to appear. Then, he was going to reassemble the soul-condensing cauldron and fight Li Moran head-on. This would also buy time for Bai Yanran and the others to escape. Yi Fei even thought of letting the dragon tortoise take Xiao Chao away. However, Xiao Chao did not leave. Instead, he imitated the heavenly Tao tree lord and waved his hand like an old man. Xiao Chao was not afraid. This was because when Lemoran attacked again, an iron-masked man walked out silently from the void. He wore a scarlet cape and grabbed the terrifying divine saber of heaven and earth with one hand. Then he crushed it with his bare hands. That's the Big Dipper Blood Hand. He is indeed Shue-Tu, the former #1 on the Earth Carnage roll. A Tao Lord of the Yin-Yang Palace exclaimed in fear. This news also shocked Yi Fei and the others. This arena master of the arena of life and death was actually the former #1 expert on the Earth Carnage roll. Seeing Shue-Tu appear, Lemoran's smiling expression turned serious. Shue-Tu, old friend, what is the meaning of this? Are you going to attack me? Lemoran, you are still so hypocritical. Back then, I treated you as my best brother. Whatever you wanted, I would give it to you. Even though it was clearly her who fell in love with me first, for the sake of our brotherhood, I still rejected her and gave the opportunity to you. But how did you treat me? For a mere divine Lord Abijna, you actually plotted against me in the core world while I was heavily injured. You made me fake my death and even peeled off my face to disguise as me. You tried to get close to her and violate her. Unfortunately, man proposes, but God disposes. She still saw through your hypocrisy. In the end, you gave her to your scoundrel friends and humiliated her to death. Lemoran, Shue-Tu will never forget a brother like you for the rest of his life. Back then, your scoundrel friends all died in my hands. Now it's your turn. Shue-Tu walked towards Lemoran step by step. His eyes under the iron mask emitted endless hostility and killing intent. Chapter 2368. See you in Jianghu, perhaps. From the very beginning, Shue-Tu had been plotting to create a reason to kill Lemoran. And now, Shue-Tu had undoubtedly found it. Lemoran had disobeyed Shue-Tu's orders and attacked the younger generation. Shue-Tu had a good reason to kill Lemoran without worrying about being attacked by the experts from the Palace of the King of Gods. Thinking of this, Yi Fei suddenly looked at Mad Dog. Mad Dog lowered his head guiltily. Yi Fei, Master asked me to apologize on his behalf. In order to deal with Lemoran, he used you, but Field Master was forced to do so. The Deathmatch Palace and the Palace of the King of Gods are allies. Unless Lemoran provoked Master, the Deathmatch Palace would not have allowed Master to attack, no matter how deep the hatred between the two sides was. In that case, Senior Shue-Tu is not helping me because of Yinbing. Yi Fei sneered and looked up at the two Sir Gods in the sky. This time, Shue-Tu did not hold back. He fought with his life on the line, which made Lemoran furious. Mad Dog's expression was gloomy. Killing Lemoran is Master's only wish. Master said that he felt guilty for using you. In the future, I will entrust my life to you. Yi Fei finally understood why Shue-Tu asked Mad Dog to follow him. It had to be said that the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Whether it was Shue-Tu, Lemoran, or Pan Wang, they were all true veterans. Compared to them, I'm still too inexperienced. Yi Fei smiled bitterly. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and reformed his soul cauldron. At this time, the battle between Shue-Tu and Lemoran had moved from the sky to the clouds. This battle between Sir Gods had shocked the entire city of the King of Gods. But more divine senses were greedily scanning Yi Fei, especially when they saw that the Ghost Emperor Cauldron could still be reformed after being shattered by a Sir God, but it was even more broken. A cold light suddenly burst out from these divine senses. Such a precious cauldron does not deserve to fall into the hands of a nameless individual. It should belong to us, Sir Gods. Boom! Silently, another Sir God attacked. In the sky, Lemoran and Shue-Tu roared at the same time. Yi Fei, take Mad Dog and leave quickly. Leave the city of the King of Gods as soon as possible. Shue-Tu owes you, and he can only repay you in his next life. Shue-Tu actually had the will to die. Yi Fei's expression changed. Originally, he should be angry that Shue-Tu had used him. But looking at the crazy Shue-Tu in the sky, who was trading injuries and life for life with Lemoran, Yi Fei suddenly found himself unable to be angry. After all, although Shue-Tu had used him, Shuetu had helped him more. Let's go. Sensing the unscrupulous divine senses in the vicinity that were staring at the Ghost Emperor Cauldron, Yi Fei knew that he had to leave the city of the King of Gods. Otherwise, the Ghost Emperor Cauldron would kill him here. It's a pity that I didn't get to see Zhao Yu before I leave. Yi Fei shook his head. Suddenly, he looked up at Ziyu, who was not far away. Ziyu, if you don't want Zhao Yu to target you, help me pass a message. Tell her to wait for me. One day, I will personally come to the King of God's palace and take her back. Big Black, let's go. Boom. Hearing Yi Fei's words, the dragon turtle that was playing dead on the ground immediately flipped over and picked up the heavily injured by Yanran, Bai Shizhong, and Mad Dog on its back. Then, it flapped its azure dragon wings and flew into the distance. That black pig, where do you think you're going? Stop him, kill Yimo, and take back the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. The half-step Sir God of the Yin-Yang Palace flew into a rage and led his men to attack again. Above the clouds, the battle between Limoran and Shuetu had reached its climax. Both sides were fighting fiercely, and no one was paying attention to the situation on the ground. The other forces that had already noticed the Ghost Emperor Cauldron were ready to make a move. The dragon turtle had just flown less than 1,000 meters away. Suddenly, a terrifying saber radiance appeared in the void. It split the sky in half and slashed at Yi Fei. Where do you think you're going? Leave the cauldron behind, and the Tyrant Saber School will spare your life. The Tyrant Saber School is just a small sect. If the cauldron falls into the hands of the King of God's palace, anyone who dares to touch it will be an enemy of the King of God's palace. Ha ha! Is the King of God's palace that great? The cauldron belongs to the capable. Those who are not can get lost. A masked divine lord suddenly appeared outside the heavenly fragrance inn. He shattered the saber radiance of the Tyrant Saber School's divine lord and blocked the new divine lord from the King of God's palace. The half-step divine lords of the Yin-Yang Palace, the hidden half-step divine lords of the family Wang, the Dao lords of the Leaf family, and even many independent cultivators, such as the Lord of Heaven, appeared out of nowhere and attacked Yi Fei. Bai Shizhong's expression changed instantly. We're really done for. Yi, you're too good at causing trouble. How can I leave my sister in your care? Get lost. Yi Fei was already in a bad mood after being forced to leave the City of Gods. He simply kicked Bai Shizhong off the dragon turtle. After all, these people were here for the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. As long as Bai Shizhong did not stop them, they would not attack Bai Shizhong. At this thought, Yi Fei wanted to kick Mad Dog and Bai Yanran off the dragon turtle as well, so that he could attract all the firepower. Mad Dog's expression changed, and he said angrily, Master asked me to follow you. If you chase me away, I'll go down right now and return this life to you. Bai Yanran was also angry. He took out a dagger and put it to his neck. Try chasing me away. You're ruthless. Yi Fei was extremely depressed. He could only let Bai Yanran and Mad Dog continue to sit on the dragon turtle's back. Only Bai Shizhong, who was kicked off the dragon turtle, flew into a rage and cursed, Yi, you're not human. It's fine if you run for your life, but how dare you kidnap my sister? Boom! Bai Shizhong's voice was instantly drowned out by the terrifying explosions of divine powers. Two more masked divine lords rushed over from afar and attacked Yi Fei. Bai Shizhong's face turned pale. Yi Fei was also anxious. He was already considering whether he should bear the pain of abandoning the Ghost Emperor Cauldron and run for his life. At this moment, a calm voice sounded in his and Bai Yanran's ears. Go east, and you'll be able to leave the city. The ruins of the Heavenly Palace of Despair are there. It was Pan Wang's voice. Just like the other divine lords present, Pan Wang was still covered in a black cloth. Beside him was an old man dressed in black. The two of them charged towards the divine lords together. On the ground, there was suddenly a rumbling sound of running. They were all masked in black cloth, but Mad Dog recognized many familiar figures at a glance. It's Black Widow Butcher. They're the reinforcements from the arena of death. Kill. No one responded to Mad Dog. The team that appeared directly charged towards the Yin-Yang Palace and the warriors from Family Wang causing the battlefield to become even more chaotic. Seeing so many people covering his escape, Yi Fei suddenly felt that his trip to the city of divine monarchs was not in vain. At least he had made so many friends, so many brothers who had gone through thick and thin with him. Senior Shuai too, don't worry. I'll definitely take good care of Mad Dog. Senior Pan Wang, I'll definitely go to the ruins of the Heavenly Palace of Despair. One day, I'll make the Heavenly Palace of Despair appear in the world openly. Zhao Yu, wait for me. Chapter 2369. Just to wait for him. Inside the City of Divine Kings, the battle was in full swing. Outside the City of Divine Kings, Yi Fei was at a loss. His main purpose in heading to the Divine Prefecture was to find Zhao Yu. Unfortunately, Zhao Yu was within reach, but he had to leave the City of Divine Kings because of the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. In this vast world, where can I find shelter? Yi Fei sighed in his heart. The owner asked me to follow you. Wherever you go, I will go. Mad Dog said lightly. He did not care where he went. Yi Fei nodded, then shook his head. He understood that asking for Mad Dog's opinion was purely a waste of time. Finally, he looked at Bai Yin-Ran. Bai Yin-Ran said, "Didn't the Grand Elder say that we should head east? It is said that there are ruins of the Heavenly Palace of Despair there. Perhaps we can find treasures there and improve our strength." That may be the case, but do you know the exact location of the ruins? Yi Fei retorted gloomily. This Pan Wang was really something. He never spoke clearly. At this moment, the silent Mad Dog suddenly thought of something. With a strange expression, he said, "What relic? I don't know. But I heard from a master that the east side of the City of Divine Kings seems to be the territory of the Sword Palace." What? Sword Palace? Yi Fei's blank eyes suddenly lit up. He hadn't forgotten what the Nine Heavens Sword Master had told him. However, when he came to the Divine Land, he was so focused on looking for Zhao Yu that he forgot about the Sword Palace. Now that he had left the City of Divine Kings, why not go to the Sword Palace and try his luck? Perhaps he could even use the power of the Sword Palace to return to the City of God Kings faster and bring back Zhao Yu. Thinking of this, Yi Fei was no longer confused. Instead, he was instantly filled with fighting spirit. He said in a deep voice, "All right, let's go to the Sword Palace. Big Black, let's go. Xiao Chao, pay attention and scout ahead." When Yi Fei stepped onto the dragon turtle, he did not forget to ask Xiao Chao to keep an eye out for anyone following him. After all, the Ghost Emperor Cauldron in his hands was too dangerous. Even if he left the City of Divine Kings, it was hard to guarantee that no one would attack him on the way. Therefore, Yi Fei did not dare to be careless while they were on the road. The battle in the City of Divine Kings gradually came to an end not long after Yi Fei left. The Sir Gods who had attacked all went into hiding. Only the bloody battle between Shuai Tu and Li Moran lasted for 10 days and 10 nights. 10 days later, the palace of the King of Gods finally could not accept the death of their divine emperor. They took action and rescued Li Moran. Shuai Tu, on the other hand, was severely injured and unconscious after being besieged by several Sir Gods from the Palace of Deities. In this battle, Weaver King, who had never revealed his abilities, had also displayed a shocking and terrifying combat strength. Weaver King had blocked 5 Sir Gods alone and had even forcefully rescued Shuai Tuesday. This had shocked the human ancestor in the palace of the Divine King. Another thing that shocked the palace of the King of Gods was that Zhao Yu had finally broken through to become a Dao Lord after several months of seclusion. However, due to the Ghost Emperor Cauldron, most of the upper echelons of the palace of the King of Gods had gathered together to discuss and did not have the time to congratulate him. However, there was one person who had been waiting anxiously for Zhao Yu even before he came out of seclusion. This person was none other than Ziyu. After Yang Hao's death in battle, the matter of Du Chong and Yang Hao using Zhao Yu's name to assassinate Yi Fei was also exposed. Although this matter was suppressed by Ziyu's elder father, Ziyu knew that if she could not obtain Zhao Yu's forgiveness, she would be in trouble in the palace of the King of Gods. Coupled with Du Chong's deceit, Ziyu finally made the right decision in her regret. Hence, when Zhao Yu came out of seclusion, she saw Ziyu kneeling before her. "Uncle Master, I have done something wrong. I was deceived by Du Chong and stole your notes. I also used your name to invite Yi Fei to meet me at the Heavenly Fragrance House." Ziyu told her everything honestly. She did not dare to hide anything from Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu listened quietly with a calm expression. However, her heart was in turmoil. Yi Fei had actually come to the city of the King of Gods. She subconsciously thought that Yi Fei had come to look for her. However, because the palace of the King of Gods was too strict and wanted her to become a Dao Lord as soon as possible, she had missed the best opportunity to meet Yi Fei. Du Chong and Yang Hao had even joined forces and used her name to plot against Yi Fei. He must have been very disappointed at that time. For me, he did not hesitate to kill his way from the Earth realm to the Celestial realm, and then from Qingzhou to the city of the King of Gods. In the end, I did not do anything for him. I even almost killed him. Zhao Yu's eyes were suddenly filled with tears. Ziyu looked at Zhao Yu in shock. In her impression, Zhao Yu was noble and cold. She was like a goddess from the 9 heavens who was otherworldly. But now, Zhao Yu was crying for a man. She was crying for Yi Fei. Ziyu was shocked. She could not believe it. Could it be that Uncle Master Zhao Yu and Yi Fei are lovers? How is that possible? The difference between the two of them is like heaven and earth. But if that was not the case, how could Zhao Yu, who had always been cold, cry for a man? Ziyu suddenly became nervous. She thought of the words Yi Fei had asked her to pass on before he left. Originally, Ziyu did not want to pass on Yi Fei's message. However, Zhao Yu's attitude made Ziyu say, "Uncle Master Zhao, Yi Fei asked me to pass on his message before he left." "What message?" Zhao Yu sounded a little nervous. Ziyu had a strange look on her face as she said, "He asked you to wait for him. One day, he will come to the God King's palace to take you back." Upon hearing this, Zhao Yu's heart could not help but tremble. At the same time, she felt a warm current pass through her. The tears in her eyes turned into a faint smile. This guy is still as arrogant as before. Does he think it's that easy to enter the God King's palace? And that Du Chong, Zhao Yu's face suddenly turned cold. She suddenly rushed towards the largest palace in the God King's palace. That was where the upper echelons of the God King's palace discussed matters. Only divine lords could enter. Only 2 disciples of the God King's palace could enter. One was Zhao Yu, and the other was Du Chong. At this moment, Du Chong was standing inside with a cold expression. He was being questioned by the upper echelons of the God King's palace. They were mainly asking about Yi Fei and the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. There were even divine lords who said that they would send people to hunt down Yi Fei and take back the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. At this moment, Zhao Yu walked in and immediately attracted everyone's attention. Du Chong also looked at Zhao Yu subconsciously. He habitually revealed a handsome smile and nodded slightly. Zhao Yu did not even look at Du Chong. She just walked forward and looked at the Divine Lord Elders and the several Rinzhu seated high above. "Greetings, patriarchs. Zhao Yu, I have a request." What is it?" Among the Rinzhu, a female Rinzhu in a red robe looked at Zhao Yu dotingly. She was Zhao Yu's master, Chuyun Rinzhu. "Master, I would like to ask you to retract your orders and not hunt down Yi Fei. I even hope that you can allow me to leave the palace and look for Yi Fei." Zhao Yu mustered up her courage and faced Chuyun Rinzhu. Her words shocked Rinzhu. One of the Rinzhu slammed the table and said, "Zhao Yu, what nonsense are you talking about? Do you know that Yi Fei is a demon? Not only did he kill Yang Hao, he even took away the Ghost Emperor Cauldron that should have belonged to the God King's palace." Chapter 2370. The trip to the Sword Palace. Do you know what you were saying? Given your status and position, your future husband should be a true prodigy like Feng Yun or one of the princes of the Crimson Moon Holy Dynasty. Only he is worthy of you. No matter what happened between you and Yi Fei in the past, from the moment you stepped into the palace of the deity, you were like the stars in the sky, while he was just a clay ball on the ground. Chuyun Rinzhu was furious. She had never expected that her most valued disciple would fall in love with a lone cultivator. The palace of the deity would never accept such a thing. Chuyun Rinzhu wasn't the only one who was furious. The other Rinzhu were also furious. Yifei, who is he? He is just a lone cultivator. He thinks that he has some luck and dares to have improper thoughts about Zhao Yu. It seems like seizing the Ghost Emperor Cauldron is too easy a punishment. He cannot be allowed to live. Du Chong's eyes flashed with jealousy and indignation when he heard Zhao Yu defend Yifei. He couldn't help but mock. Zhao Yu, you should give up on Yifei. The difference between the two of you is like heaven and earth. Oh yes, I heard that when he escaped, he kidnapped Bai Shizhong's sister, and Bai Shizhong was suddenly unable to continue because an aura of death had suddenly locked onto him. The dual wills of ice and fire appeared on Zhao Yu's body at the same time. His voice was icy as he said, Du Chong, this is the last time I'm warning you. In the future, if you dare to do anything to Yifei or say anything bad about Yifei, then don't blame me for not caring about our relationship as fellow disciples. Master, Rinzhu, I will say the same thing. If you kill Yifei, you will be killing me. If Yifei dies, I will not live either. With that, Zhao Yu turned around and left. His eyes were filled with tears. Shiyun Rinzhu was so angry that her entire body was trembling. She raised her hand and was about to hit Zhao Yu. However, she had put too much effort into Zhao Yu. Sometimes, she even treated Zhao Yu like her own daughter. How could she bear to hurt Zhao Yu? It's all Yifei's fault. If it weren't for him, you would not have said such things. Shiyun Rinzhu couldn't let Zhao Yu down, so she could only vent her anger on Yifei. The other human ancestors of the deity monarch palaces were enraged and cursed together. This kid is indeed a devil. Leaving him alive will definitely be a disaster. But if we attack Yifei, what if we force Zhao Yu to rebel? A Rinzhu cautiously reminded them. The Rinzhu, who had been furious just now, immediately fell silent. Du Chong's face turned pale, and he clenched his fists tightly. If the Rinzhu of the deity palace were willing to step in, Yifei would not be able to escape even if he had wings. However, Zhao Yu's words obviously made the Rinzhu give up on pursuing Yifei. Du Chong was so angry that his eyes turned green. Yifei didn't know that because of Zhao Yu's attitude, he was lucky enough to escape the pursuit of the Rinzhu of the deity palace. At this moment, he was in a restaurant, eavesdropping on the discussions of the people around him. The battle at the city of the deity palace had spread far and wide. Not only had it spread to the countries near the city of the deity palace, but it had also spread to a small part of the countries under the influence of the Sword Palace. Unlike Qingzhou, there were a number of small countries near every major city in the Divine Prefecture. These small countries were the subsidiary forces of the major cities. The country that Yifei had entered was a small country between the city of 10,000 swords and the city of the deity palace. There were no Rinzhu in this country, and the strongest was a Rinzhu. For now, Yifei was still safe. However, Yifei knew that the implications of the Ghost Emperor Cauldron were too great. Even if Pan King and Shui Tu could suppress ordinary divine monarchs in the city of divine kings, they couldn't suppress the overlord of the city of divine kings, the Palace of Divine Kings. Once the Palace of Divine Kings was determined to hunt them down, even sending divine monarchs like the human ancestor, it would be a very dangerous matter. Therefore, the first thing that Yifei did after entering this small country was to disguise himself. He and Mad Dog became independent cultivators and traveled around. Bai Yanran became a young lady of a large family and traveled alone. This way, they wouldn't attract any attention. At the same time, not long ago, the three of them joined a caravan. This caravan was considered the imperial merchant of this small country and was responsible for paying tribute to the city of 10,000 swords every year. This also made many warriors who wanted to go to the city of 10,000 swords choose to join this caravan. Today was also the day that the caravan gathered. The restaurant was packed with people. Suddenly, someone shouted excitedly, "It's here! The airship to the city of 10,000 swords is here." Yifei was also a little excited. One must know that the heaven realm was very vast. Even a small country was incomparably vast. Warriors below the heavenly venerate level might spend 10 years and still not be able to leave the country. Even a Renzu would need to spend several months. Moreover, there were at least a dozen large and small countries in the way to the city of 10,000 swords, so the time spent would be even longer. Therefore, there were only two ways to go to the Sword Palace. One was to take the expensive teleportation formation, and the other was to follow the caravan to the city of 10,000 swords and take the airship. Considering that the teleportation formation was near, there must be forces who wanted to seize the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Yi Fei finally decided to take the airship. However, he did not go up immediately. Instead, he carefully observed for a while. After confirming that no one was following him, he nodded to Mad Dog and Bai Yanran, who were not far away. The three of them would enter the airship from different directions without attracting attention. However, Yi Fei did not expect that while he was observing the crowd, he saw Yi Fei order a table full of dishes in the beastmark space. He ate a little and stopped. The dragon turtle's heart ached. Suddenly, its black mouth shot out like lightning. Its tongue curled and swept up the table full of dishes, including the plates. Yi Fei's face darkened. He clearly saw a pair of eyes staring at him. It was a little girl. Her eyes were shining as she stared at him, as if she had discovered something new. Yi Fei had the urge to drag the dragon turtle out and beat it up. They had hidden themselves very well, but the dragon turtle had almost ruined their plan. Fortunately, it was only a little girl who saw this scene, and an ordinary little girl with no cultivation. Yi Fei did not mind. He only nodded slightly to Mad Dog and Bai Yanran. The three of them entered the airship together. However, they did not gather together. Instead, they chose different spots and sat down cross-legged to cultivate. However, what left Yi Fei speechless was that not long after he sat down, the little girl flew up under the protection of an old couple. The little girl was clearly surprised to see Yi Fei. The old couple stared at Yi Fei sternly. They even vaguely emitted the aura of a Tao Lord, as if warning him. The surrounding cultivators consciously opened up a large empty space for the three of them to cultivate. Yi Fei acted as if nothing had happened. He moved to the side and chose the furthest corner. He closed his eyes and rested, continuing to comprehend the golden body of despair of the Tao Lord realm. Moreover, after the battle in the City of Divine Kings, Yi Fei seemed to have vaguely seen a strange mountain. Chapter 2371. Demon Mountain in Sight. This was because a martial artist's Tao Mountain changed according to the martial artist's talent. The stronger a martial artist was, the stronger their Tao Mountain would be. It would become increasingly difficult to cross the Tao Mountain that blocked one's path and turn it into a staircase to reach the peak of martial arts. Although Yi Fei was only at the late stage of the Heavenly Lord realm, and was actually a half-step Tao Lord at the peak of the Heavenly Lord realm, there was still some distance between him and the peak of the Heavenly Lord realm. However, his combat strength had long since reached the level of an ordinary Tao Lord. This actually allowed him to observe his own Tao Mountain in advance. It was a towering and majestic mountain peak that stretched as far as the eye could see. Just looking at the Tao Mountain made Yi Fei feel depressed. Clearly, his Tao Mountain wasn't that easy to cross. After all, just breaking through to the golden body of despair required 1 million Xian veins. That was a huge amount of cultivation resources. It seems like it's almost impossible to break through to the Tao Lord realm in a short period of time. Right now, I can only try my best to comprehend more the golden body of despair to lay a better foundation for breaking through to the Tao Lord realm. At this thought, Yi Fei looked at Bai Yanran. Along the way, he had taken the time to impart the golden body of despair to her. At this moment, Bai Yanran wasn't far away, cultivating with her eyes closed. However, the way a beauty cultivated was still very attractive. Even though Bai Yanran was wearing a veil, it still couldn't block out the fiery gazes from all around. However, Mad Dog's position just happened to be not far from Bai Yanran's side. Anyone who wanted to get close to Bai Yanran had to pass by Mad Dog. Looking at Mad Dog, who was exuding a crazy aura from time to time, Many martial artists looked at Mad Dog with resentment. The heavens are really unfair. It's not easy to get a chance to be on the same boat as a beauty, but there's a crazy Tao lord on the other side. What a killjoy. I think this person might be a lunatic who cultivates the demonic path. Although beauties are good, it would be too unlucky to provoke a lunatic. Actually, lunatic isn't that bad. There's someone even crazier over there. Ever since he boarded the ship, I haven't seen him open his eyes. He spent all his time cultivating. It's just a matter of traveling. Why is he working so hard? A warrior pursed his lips and noticed Yi Fei. However, Yi Fei did not notice them. Ever since he boarded the ship, Yi Fei had been completely immersed in his cultivation. The reason he was so crazy was not only to comprehend the golden body of despair, but also to repair the Ghost Emperor Cauldron as soon as possible. After all, the Ghost Emperor Cauldron had already been broken twice, and its power had dropped to less than 30%. If he didn't repair it as soon as possible, the next time he met a Divine Lord, even if he met a half-step Divine Lord, he would still die. This was also the reason why Yi Fei chose to take the flying ship to the city of 10,000 swords. He needed time to restore the Ghost Emperor Cauldron's power as much as possible. As Yi Fei was immersed in his cultivation, Xiao Qiao felt bored and went back to sleep. Only the dragon turtle was left. It stared at the food provided by the caravan every day and opened its black mouth. Every time this happened, there would be a little girl who would look at Yi Fei, and the black mouth that would suddenly appear with a very surprised gaze. She had been observing him for dozens of days. She realized that Yi Fei didn't seem like a bad person. The old couple beside her also seemed to be immersed in some kind of mysterious cultivation. The little girl finally became bolder. Little by little, she quietly approached Yi Fei. She even grabbed a very delicate snack and suddenly threw it at Yi Fei. When the dragon turtle realized that it was just a little girl with no cultivation, it didn't reject her. It habitually opened its black mouth and ate the snack in one bite. The little girl was immediately greatly encouraged. She threw a few more snacks at the dragon turtle. This made the dragon turtle hesitate. However, when it saw that Yi Fei was still cultivating and Xiao Qiao was sleeping, the dragon turtle finally accepted them all and ate them in one bite. As time passed, the dragon turtle and the little girl formed some kind of tacit understanding. This made Yi Fei, who happened to discover it, feel very depressed. However, when he thought about the dragon turtle's recent performance, Yi Fei could only pretend that he didn't see it and continue to cultivate crazily. As he cultivated, the cracks on the nearly broken Ghost Emperor Cauldron began to gradually reduce. Finally, after flying for about 3 months, the Ghost Emperor Cauldron finally returned to its original state when Yi Fei first obtained it. It's a pity that my cultivation level is still too low. I can only repair the current damage of the Ghost Emperor Cauldron, but I can't repair its previous damage. Otherwise, if I had a complete Ghost Emperor Cauldron, I might have been able to kill Li Moran with one blow. Yi Fei shook his head and suddenly opened his eyes. He was startled when he saw the little girl. She had actually run to the opposite side of him. She was even holding a snack in her hand and feeding it to the dragon turtle. Yi Fei's sudden opening of his eyes gave the little girl fright. The dragon turtle also felt very guilty. At this moment, the old couple also woke up. When they saw that the little girl wasn't by their side, but had run to Yi Fei's side, they were shocked. However, when they saw that Yi Fei was only at the Lord of Heaven realm and that the dragon turtle was a ruler, they heaved a sigh of relief. The old woman immediately took the little girl back and whispered, "Miss, you scared us to death. There are bad people outside. How can you run around?" The old man glared at Yi Fei. "Take care of your turtle. Wu Mountain is ahead. Be careful not to lose your life." After saying that, the old man turned around and left with the little girl. He quickly left the area. Yi Fei was baffled. Was it a threat? What kind of place was the Demon Mountain? He looked up at Bai Yanran in the distance and then at Mad Dog. At this moment, several Dao monarchs of the caravan suddenly appeared on the flying ship. They said in a low voice, "Dear guests, the Demon Mountain is ahead. That is the territory of the demons. If anyone leaves the flying ship and is attacked by the demons, we will not save them." With that, these Tao monarchs rushed to the observation deck of the flying ship as if they were facing a great enemy. The martial artists on the flying ship also became noisy. It's the Demon Mountain. This is the most famous dangerous place near the city of 10,000 swords. It's said that apart from large groups and lone martial artists, very few people dare to pass through the Demon Mountain. These martial artists discussed animatedly. Some of them were even bold enough to fly outside to observe the Demon Mountain. However, these people did not dare to go more than 1 meter away from the flying ship. They were obviously afraid of being attacked by the demons. Yifei could not help but be puzzled. He followed the crowd and walked to the side of the ship. Bai Yanran and Mad Dog also walked over. Yifei asked, "Isn't this the territory of the Sword Palace? There are demons here. Is there a celestial like the core world? Could the ruins of the heavenly palace of despair be here?" "Impossible. I've heard the name of the Demon Mountain from old ancestor Panwan. It said that this Demon Mountain is very strange. It was once the remnant of a demon who was close to the ancient Emperor realm. This Tao Mountain is filled with demonic nature. As long as a martial artist is injured, their blood essence and lifespan will be constantly drained. In the end, they will die here," Bai Yanran said with a serious expression. Mad Dog also said coldly, "I remember that the sect master also mentioned this Demon Mountain. He once said that it's best not to provoke the demons in this Demon Mountain. There's no need to joke about your blood essence and lifespan just to get rid of a group of demons. Moreover, the demons here are very law-abiding. As long as you pay them a toll, they will not take the initiative to attack." Chapter 2372. A sneak attack in the middle of the night. The demons were indeed very disciplined. When they knew that this was a merchant ship heading to the city of 10,000 swords to pay tribute to the Sword Palace, the demons did not stop them. After collecting a considerable amount of Xian veins, the rolling demon chi around the flying ship suddenly disappeared. The flying ship continued to move forward. Soon, Yifei saw the true appearance of the Demon Mountain. It was a huge black mountain range. From afar, it looked like a demon dragon entrenched on the ground. However, it was not a real mountain range. It was a Tao mountain left behind by an existence close to the ancient emperor after he fell. When Yifei approached the Demon Marquis Mountain, he could clearly feel his ghost emperor cauldron trembling slightly. Clearly, the Ghost Emperor Cauldron could also feel the incomparably terrifying pressure from the Demon Marquis Mountain. In order to reach the city of 10,000 swords, the Demon Mountain had become an obstacle that they had to pass through. As long as they could cross the Demon Mountain, it meant that they were not far from the Sword Palace. The successful negotiation between the merchant group and the demons also raised the spirits of the martial artists on the flying ship. Yifei and Bai Yanran looked at each other, and both heaved a sigh of relief. "It seems that we were right to split up. The forces in the City of Divine Kings should not have caught up with us," Bai Yanran said with a smile. When she realized that there was no danger, she naturally would not pretend not to know Yifei. Instead, she stood beside Yifei. Mad Dog hesitated for a moment. He did not stand over, but took the initiative to move further away. This made many martial artists who wanted to strike up a conversation with Bai Yanran very depressed. They had tried for a few months, but could not find a chance to talk to Bai Yanran. In the end, Yifei did not do anything. Bai Yanran actually took the initiative to talk to him. They even seemed to be on good terms. The strange thing about the Demon Mountain was not only that it was occupied by demons. When night fell, the entire Demon Mountain would emit a powerful demonic light. Every time the demonic light appeared, the flying boat would stop and activate the defensive formation, floating in the air without moving. The demonic light of the demonic mountain will produce a powerful suction force. Once one is sucked into the demonic light, the flying boat will be in danger of crashing. Considering that there will be too many demonic light tonight, in order to ensure everyone's safety, we will let the flying boat stay on the demonic mountain for one night. The Tao Lord of the caravan stepped forward and explained the situation to the others, then returned to the interior of the vessel and continued to stand guard. They were responsible for protecting the treasures, which were being escorted to the Sword Palace. As usual, the guests on the airboat were cultivating, sleeping, or watching the devil light spurting out of the demon's mountain. They would leave this dangerous zone after daybreak. Yi Fei and Bai Yanran also found an empty space and sat down. They began to exchange their insights on cultivating the golden body of despair. Mad Dog sat cross-legged to the side with a murderous look on his face. This made many warriors who wanted to approach him give up helplessly. The night deepened. Many warriors on the airboat had fallen asleep. After Yi Fei and Bai Yanran finished their exchange, they also sat down and continued to cultivate. At this moment, outside the airboat, in the pitch-black demonic mountain, a pair of cold eyes suddenly appeared. "Are you sure the target is on this airboat?" "I'm sure. It's just that this airboat belongs to the royal family of Chiyun, and they have paid a toll according to the rules. If news of this gets out, I'm afraid they will lose their source of income." Then let's make sure the news doesn't get out. Pass down the order. Apart from the target this time, kill everyone else. Boom. In the darkness, the demons used some unknown method. Suddenly, an intense demonic light appeared under the airboat, which seemed to be in a safe zone. The impact caused the entire airboat to shake violently. Many warriors on the airboat were immediately shaken by the impact. The Downlord in charge of protecting the airboat also shouted, "Everyone, don't panic. This is just an accidental burst of demonic light. Our airboat will be able to rush out immediately." As he spoke, the entire airboat was already shining brightly. It was about to rush out of the range of the demonic light. The Downlords looked nervous. This was not the first time they had come to the demonic mountain. In the past, such an accident had never happened where the airboat stopped. Boom! As the airboat moved, suddenly another demonic light erupted from the demonic mountain like a volcanic eruption. The impact caused the airboat to shake even more. Bai Yanran immediately stopped cultivating. He stood up and said in confusion, "What's going on? Can't the Dao Lords of the caravan choose a safer place to camp?" Yi Fei also stood up. He looked at the shaking airboat, and he shook his head with a serious expression. "These demonic lights are strange. It doesn't seem to be a coincidence. It seems to be man-made. Big Brother Ji Feng, protect Bai Yanran well. I'll go out and take a look." Boom! At this moment, the third demonic light attacked the airboat even more fiercely. It even shattered the defensive array of the airboat. Before the people on the airboat could react, the fourth and fifth demonic light erupted from the pitch-black demonic mountain and blasted into the sky. On the airboat, the Downlords of the caravan were all shocked. Someone even roared in anger. "Oh no! This is an enemy attack. A demonic person is controlling the demonic mountain and attacking us. If you don't want to die, abandon the airboat immediately." The Lord of Heaven, who had already left the caravan, put the big box into his space belt in advance and jumped down the demonic mountain. Seeing the caravan's actions, more martial artists also left the airboat and jumped down the pitch-black demonic mountain. Yi Fei did not dare to delay. He knew that the airboat had become the target of the demonic person's attack. He could only quickly jump out of the airboat with Bai Yanran and Mad Dog. Bam! The moment they jumped down, the airboat, which had lost its defense, was blasted into pieces by the demonic light. Some of the martial artists who could not escape the airboat in time were also shattered. The entire sky was filled with a strong bloody aura that made people want to vomit. However, the bloody aura did not dissipate in the sky. Instead, it was sucked into the demonic mountain and turned into bloody light that surged into the demonic mountain. After absorbing the bloody aura, the demonic mountain became even more terrifying. Yi Fei jumped out of the airboat and subconsciously wanted to open his azure dragon wings. However, he soon discovered in shock that there was a strong void restriction in the demonic mountain. Even Downlords could not fly in the demonic mountain. However, the Downlords of the caravan were very experienced. Since they could not fly, they immediately released their dark force and condensed a pair of huge dark force wings that glided toward the demonic mountain. This was not a divine ability, but a technique to use dark force. Yi Fei took a look and instantly understood. He hurriedly condensed dark force wings with Bai Yanran and Mad Dog and slowly floated down the demonic mountain. This moment seemed long, but it actually happened in a short moment. The entire airboat had exploded. Then, the martial artists on the airboat fell down the demonic mountain like dumplings. There were also a few unlucky ones who did not grasp the technique of condensing dark force wings in time. Their entire bodies smashed heavily into the demonic mountain like meteorites. Those martial artists with strong defenses were still fine. Even if they fell from a high altitude, they would not be injured. The key was that those martial artists with weak defenses and weak realms fell straight down. Even if they did not fall to their deaths, many of them were bruised and swollen. There were even people who collided with the demonic mountain and had wounds of different sizes on their bodies. Chapter 2373. Internal strife. These demonic lights seemed to have a strong spirituality as they began to absorb the blood essence of the injured martial artists. Even though these martial artists were releasing their dark force as fast as they could to heal their wounds, they were terrified that no matter how hard they tried to heal their wounds, they would still be unable to heal their wounds. Even if they used precious healing pills that could instantly heal their wounds, they still couldn't escape the fate of having their blood essence sucked away by the demonic mountain. Even the wounds that had already healed started to crumble under the influence of the demonic mountain. Their blood essence flowed out of their wounds like a trickle. The terrified cries of the injured martial artists could be heard everywhere. There were also martial artists who pounced on the caravan in fear and cried for help. However, the caravan didn't save them. They even attacked mercilessly and killed them all. The caravan's actions immediately angered the crowd. After all, many of these injured martial artists had companions or even relatives. These people immediately surrounded the caravan. Why are you killing people? How are you any different from the demonic dwellers? The Tao Lord of the caravan had a solemn expression as he sneered. Once you enter the demonic mountain and get injured, not only will you lose your blood essence, you will also be affected by the demonic mountain and become demonic. Everyone, check your own condition. If you're injured, leave immediately. Don't force us to attack. As he spoke, the leader of the caravan released his spiritual consciousness and sent a voice transmission to the surrounding area. Where is the demonic dweller commander? We have paid enough money every time we pass by the demonic mountain. Why are you attacking us? We are escorting the treasures of the Sword Palace. His voice reverberated, but no demonic dweller answered. The entire demonic mountain was silent and strange. Suddenly, the injured martial artists who were rejected by the caravan didn't show any gratitude to their friends and relatives who had taken the initiative to ask for help. Instead, their eyes turned red and they roared in despair. We can sense the demon god calling us. Come with us and enter the demonic mountain. Roar. In the end, these injured martial artists no longer spoke in human voices. Instead, they roared like wild beasts. They started to wildly attack any normal person who approached them. At the same time, the more they attacked, the faster their blood essence was lost. Yi Fei was shocked to see that a few of the injured sovereigns had lost too much blood essence in a short period of time. They turned from strong youths into hunched old men. This scene caused even more martial artists to feel fear. Bai Yanran subconsciously began to check if there were any injuries on his body. Mad Dog's expression was solemn. He took a deep breath and said, I finally understand why Field Master said not to approach this demon mountain if there is no need. Yi Fei had a heavy expression on his face as he nodded. This devil mountain was simply too bizarre. As long as they were injured, they would lose their blood essence and even go berserk and attack others. And the crux of the matter was that in a battle between warriors, there would always be injuries. This made the Demon Mountain a truly dangerous place. It seems like the Devil Dwellers are determined to deal with us. We can't stay here and wait for death. All those who are not injured, gather together and break out with us. Fellow Taoist over there, please come with us. After waiting for a long time without receiving a reply from the Devil Dwellers, the Tao Lords of the caravan completely gave up on negotiations and focused on breaking out. As Mad Dog was a Tao lord, he was also invited to join the caravan. It wasn't just Mad Dog. The old couple that Yi Fei had seen before was also nervously protecting the little girl. They walked in front of the caravan and tried to break out of the demon mountain. Yi Fei glanced at Bai Yanran and said in a low voice, "This demon mountain is too strange. It is not wise to fight here." Bai Yanran and Mad Dog nodded in unison. They suddenly sped up and rushed in the direction of the caravan. The caravan did not stop them. They just blocked all the other martial artists who tried to get close. "Let's go." The leader of the caravan, a powerful half-step divine lord, roared and quickly led his men out of the demon mountain to break out of the encirclement. However, at this moment, a burst of cold and strange laughter suddenly came from all around the demon mountain. "Everyone from Chiyun, since you have already fallen into the demon mountain, why are you in such a hurry to leave?" "The demon dwellers. What do you want? As long as you do not attack us, we are willing to give you all the treasures that we have escorted this time." The leader of the caravan shouted loudly. Even though he was a half-step divine lord, he could not suppress his fear. After all, this demon mountain was formed by the Demon Path Mountain, which was close to the ancient emperor. Even a divine lord would not be able to escape being absorbed by the demon mountain if he was injured. In the darkness, the strange laughter of the demon dwellers came from all directions. "Ha ha! We're not interested in your treasures. What we want is one of you and something on that person. If you hand it over, we can consider letting you go." The martial artists present were very surprised. Bai Yanran and Mad Dog looked at Yi Fei together. Yi Fei's heart sank. Could it be that his whereabouts had been discovered? These demon dwellers were also here to snatch his ghost emperor cauldron? Who is it? Who among you has offended the demon dwellers? Stand up and surrender on your own accord. Don't harm everyone. The demon dwellers' threat caused the martial artists to fall into chaos. Even the leader of the caravan sternly looked around, but no one made a sound. Many of them looked around in fear. If you don't want to stand up, then don't blame this lord for being ruthless. Everyone, open up your space belts. This lord will search you one by one. I will start with the three of you. The half-step divine lord had no other choice. He decided to forcefully search them. Coincidentally, the first person this half-step divine lord wanted to search was Yi Fei and his two companions. After all, of all the people here, only Yi Fei and his two companions had strange origins. They weren't people from Chiyun, so they couldn't help being suspicious. Bai Yanran and Mad Dog's expressions changed. Yi Fei's heart sank. If they were searched, the secret of the Ghost Emperor Cauldron would be exposed. But if he didn't want to be searched, he would inevitably come into conflict with this half-step divine lord. At that time, in order to protect himself, he would have no choice but to bring out the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Could it be that the secret of the Ghost Emperor Cauldron will be exposed like this? In Yi Fei's heart, he was already 50% sure that this group of demons might have come for his Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Seeing Yi Fei refuse to open up his space belt, the half-step divine lord's eyes grew increasingly suspicious. But before he could do anything, a Tao lord in the caravan suddenly screamed in rage. At the same time, he slammed his palm into the ground. At some unknown time, a black demon scorpion had appeared on the ground. It quietly crawled up to his foot and stabbed down. Even though that Tao lord had managed to kill it in time, he discovered that even though he had killed the demon scorpion, there was still a bloody wound on his leg. Chapter 2374. Xiao Chao's attitude as the caravan was fighting amongst itself. No one knew that a large group of demon scorpions had broken out of the ground and were stabbing at them. More and more martial artists were struck by the demon scorpions, causing wounds to appear on their bodies. The appearance of these wounds caused the demonic nature of Demon Mountain to burn even hotter. The appearance of these injured martial artists caused the caravan to become even more chaotic. That half-step divine lord didn't even have time to search Yi Fei's body. He only angrily rushed forward and roared, "Why? We've already done as you requested and started investigating these people. Why won't you let us go?" The demon's abnormal attack and the appearance of a large group of demon scorpions caused Yi Fei to have a bad premonition. He couldn't help but sneer. By attacking you, the demons have already cut off your path to wealth. Do you think the demons will allow you to leave alive and leak this matter? Bang! In the distance, there was the sound of air being torn apart. This was a pitch-black rain of arrows flying towards the half-step Divine Lord. The half-step Divine Lord was even more focused. Nearly two-thirds of the demon arrows were aimed at him, causing him to roar in anger. Powerful, profound energy instantly formed a barrier around him, protecting him. But the strange thing was that before those arrows could even get close, they had already exploded. The explosions caused the demon mountain to tremble and space to crack. The explosions caused the half-step Divine Sovereign's blood to surge, and he nearly vomited blood. But once he vomited blood, the strangeness of Demon Mountain would find him. Even a half-step Divine Lord wouldn't be able to escape death. That half-step Divine Lord could only bitterly endure. Soon, he was trapped in place by the endless rain of arrows, unable to support the others. At this time, the demons in the darkness finally moved. They formed groups of 3 to 5 and attacked from the distance. Countless demon insects flew around them, forming a black tide of insects that surged from all directions. The demons had no intention of joining in the battle. Instead, they stood in the distance, laughing as they watched the liveliness. The strangeness of Demon Mountain didn't require the demons to attack. As long as they thought of a way to injure their opponents and make them bleed, they would naturally die here. As the demon insects surged, even more demon scorpions burrowed out from the ground, causing many female martial artists to scream. Bai Yanran was also screaming. In the end, she was a woman and was also afraid of these demon insects. Yi Fei, let's hurry and leave. Bai Yanran dragged Yi Fei and Mad Dog, wanting to flee. She had no hope of fighting. Mad Dog groaned. There are demon insects all around us. We can't escape. That might not be the case. Although there are many of these demonic insects, their cultivation levels are very low. Many of them haven't even reached the sovereign realm. Perhaps I have a way to poison them to death. Yi Fei stroked his chin. The first thing that came to his mind was the dragon turtle. Blackie, spray poison wind. Yi Fei threw out the dragon turtle, and then called Bai Yanran and the Mad Dog to jump on the back of the dragon turtle. Seeing the overwhelming tide of insects outside, the dragon turtle was almost scared to death. It hurriedly used all its strength to spray out a green poisonous wind. When the nearby demon insects entered the poisonous wind, their bodies suddenly trembled, and they fell straight to the ground and were instantly poisoned to death. Roar! When the dragon tortoise discovered that the demonic insects were so useless, it suddenly became as spirited as a ferocious tiger. While it spat out poisonous wind, it did not forget to pick up some fat insects to taste. The many demons at the periphery were stunned when they saw this. Is that a pig? A turtle? Or a monster? Who cares what it is? We have to kill it. Otherwise, all the demon insects will be poisoned to death. Some of the demons had already started roaring. After all, it took a lot of energy to rear demon insects. The dragon turtle's poison wind killed a large number of them. Who could bear that? Half of the demon arrows that were attacking half-step divine lords suddenly flew over. Yi Fei sneered. 2 Taiji sword cauldrons appeared behind him and shot into the sky to block the rain of arrows. At the same time, he touched his spatial belt and a black demon bow appeared in his hand. He quickly drew the bow. The arrow was like a full moon. It suddenly pierced through the rain of arrows and pierced through the head of a demon lord of heaven. The demons were in an uproar. This was the first time someone had killed their clansmen on Demon Mountain. There were even people who recognized Yi Fei's demon bow. It belonged to the demon race. Kill him. Kill that black turtle. The demons were furious. Some of the more powerful demon Dao lords even charged over from afar. Roar. At this moment, a huge commotion broke out in the merchant group. The 2 Dao lords who were injured by the devil scorpion could no longer suppress the loss of blood essence in their bodies. The strangeness of the Devil Mountain soon drove them crazy. They actually began to attack the people of the other merchant groups. This sudden turn of events caused the caravan to become even more chaotic. There were already people who were unable to withstand the pressure and began to scatter in all directions. Unfortunately, they were surrounded by devilish insects, so if they stayed together, they would be able to hold on. If they split up, they would only die faster. Yifei saw with his own eyes that a young girl not far away turned into a white-haired old woman after running a few steps. In the end, her entire body was covered by demon insects and completely devoured. Bai Yinran's face turned pale when he saw what happened to the young girl. He suddenly shouted at Yifei seriously, "Yifei, if I become like that, you must kill me immediately. Don't worry, I won't kill you. We will definitely break out of this demon mountain. Big Black, lead the way. Big Brother Ji Feng, we will cover you together," Yifei said in a low voice. Mad Dog didn't say much. He just waved his crazy claws across the air and tore all the demon arrows that came close to him. Yifei, on the other hand, raised his demonic bow and shot the heavenly monarch demon cultivator behind the demonic insects. At this moment, Xiao Qiao was also awakened by him. She opened her divine eyes of heaven and earth and looked for the most suitable weak spot to break through. Not far away, there was a sudden cry of a little girl. The dragon turtle subconsciously stopped in its tracks. Yifei also looked back nervously. He saw that not far away, the young girl they met on the flying boat was surrounded by countless demon scorpions. However, those demon scorpions were only surrounding her, but they were strangely attacking her. They formed a torrent that separated the young girl and the old couple. The dragon turtle suddenly became hesitant. It turned its head and glanced at Yifei. Yifei was also struggling. Mad Dog suddenly reminded him, "If we go back, we will fall into an even deeper encirclement. Even so, we can't just watch a young girl die and not save her." Bai Yinran was more emotional. She could choose not to save the other warriors, but she couldn't bear to see a young girl without any cultivation die just like that. "Xiao Qiao, what do you think?" Yifei asked Xiao Qiao again. When he saw that the young girl, who was about the same age as him, might die, Xiao Qiao's attitude was very firm. All right, since you want to save Xiao Qiao, then we will kill our way back." Yifei laughed. Although he didn't want to meddle in other people's business, Xiao Qiao's attitude had undoubtedly strengthened his determination. Moreover, the dragon turtle had almost finished all of the little girl's snacks on the flying boat. These snacks couldn't be eaten for free. Chapter 2375. Entrusting the orphan Yifei's decision undoubtedly roused the dragon turtle. The poisonous wind in its mouth became even more ferocious. It actually formed a special green blade light that slashed forward, creating a gap in the insect tide. Following this gap, the dragon turtle finally succeeded in rushing to the little girl's side. The little girl looked at the dragon turtle that was charging towards her in surprise. There was no smile on her face, but a look of sorrow and hope flashed across her face. Suddenly, the little girl did something. She knelt down and cried as she begged, "Please, I'm not afraid of death, but I don't want my grandparents to die. Please save them." The grandparents the little girl mentioned were the Tao Lord couple who had protected her. Although the little girl had no cultivation, her identity was not ordinary. Mad Dog smiled bitterly and shook his head. Not only are the old couple surrounded by insects, but they're also under heavy fire from the demons. I'm not confident that I can save them. Besides, there are some things that Mad Dog didn't say. Yifei also sighed. However, when he saw the little girl's pleading eyes, Yifei still gritted his teeth. He suddenly grabbed the little girl from a distance and placed her on the dragon turtle's back. "You and the dragon turtle go first. I'll go save the old couple." Since he was already here, he couldn't possibly save only half of them. Therefore, Yifei could only activate his golden body of despair and rush in the direction of the old couple. Sensing Yifei's actions, the old couple was grateful. Suddenly, they looked at each other and made a decision. "Old man, it seems that we have wronged this young man. He might be a good person. Whether he is a good person or a bad person, He is the only hope to save the young miss. We can die, but nothing can happen to the young miss. Young man, this old man begs you. Take this token and head to the Sword Palace. The Sword Palace will thank you. As the old man spoke, he ignored the whistling devil arrows stabbing into his body. With a wave of his palm, he blasted the sky full of devil insects into a vacuum. The old woman, tears streaming down her face, suddenly threw a sword-shaped command medallion into Yi Fei's hand. The demons in the distance clearly noticed this scene. A demon Dao lord roared furiously. That's the medallion. Don't let them escape. If we can't capture them alive, we'd rather kill them by mistake. Boom! The void trembled. A demon Dao lord had already charged over. Yi Fei held the token in a daze. He had thought that these demons were here to fight for the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Now, it seemed that they were here to capture the little girl. Who exactly is this little girl? She clearly doesn't have any cultivation, but she's worth this old couple protecting her with their lives? Yi Fei looked at the old couple. Seniors, aren't you coming with us? It's too late. We were seriously injured before entering the Demon Mountain. After entering the Demon Mountain, our injuries have worsened. Now that we have a benefactor to protect the young miss, it's time for the old and decrepit to go down and follow the old master. As he spoke, the old man's body suddenly swayed. He was already injured, and after being shot by the demonic arrow, his body could not hold on any longer. The demonic Dao lords that were charging over saw an opportunity and laughed sinisterly. Suddenly, they shot a few beams of mystique light towards them. However, these mystiques did not harm the old man. At the critical moment, the similarly injured old woman rushed to the front and blocked these attacks for the old man. Xiao Mei! The old man roared like an injured beast. The wrinkles on his face trembled violently. Brother, I'm going. We were born together, and we will die together. The old woman's pained voice came from the divine light that filled the sky. All right, we'll be together. Whether in heaven or hell, we will never be separated. The old man shed tears of blood as he charged into the demonic light that filled the sky. At this moment, the old woman's body was being bitten and clung to by countless demonic insects. Only her aged hand slowly reached out and held the old man's hand tightly. The little girl's heart-wrenching cries came from the back of the dragon turtle. On the ground, Yi Fei also gripped the token tightly, unable to speak. He only knew that he would never be able to forget this old couple. He couldn't refuse their request before they died. They wanted him to bring the little girl to the Sword Palace. Seniors, take care. After bowing deeply, Yi Fei suddenly broke into a run. He knocked away countless demonic insects and returned to the back of the dragon turtle. Bai Yanran had already covered the little girl's eyes. He could not bear to let her see the cruelest scene. Blackie, let's go. Squeak. Vaguely, Bai Yanran and Mad Dog seemed to hear the voice of another little girl. In the space of the beast mark, Xiao Qiao was wiping his tears. On the ground, the dragon turtle was running with all its might. It kept spitting out poisonous wind from its mouth. It poisoned all the demonic insects that came close and trampled them to death. Suddenly, Yi Fei felt the entire demon mountain shake violently. Then, two earth-shattering explosions came from behind him. Some demonic Dao lords let out shrill cries. Yi Fei's heart trembled slightly. He resisted the urge to turn around. In silence, he raised his demonic bow again and shot forward. A demonic person who was controlling the demonic insects suddenly felt a chill in his chest. His body slowly fell to the ground. This demonic person's corpse was quickly covered by countless demonic insects. Then, these insects were blown away by the dragon turtle's poisonous wind. In the distance, they could already see the light before dawn. On the ground, the dragon turtle was running wildly. It was getting further and further away from the Demon Mountain. Finally, just as the sun rose outside the Demon Mountain, Yi Fei and the rest ran completely out of the Demon Mountain. The dragon turtle immediately collapsed on the ground in exhaustion, panting heavily. Even so, the dragon turtle quickly turned its head to check on the condition of the little girl on its back. When it realized that the little girl was only tired from crying and had fallen into a deep sleep, the dragon turtle heaved a long sigh of relief. "Yifei, what should we do now?" Bai Yin carried the little girl, not knowing what to do. "Go to the Sword Palace. This is my promise to the old couple. No matter what, I must fulfill it." Yifei held the token tightly in his hand. Mad Dog's expression was crazy as he stared in the direction of the Demon Mountain. "One day, I will use this Demon Mountain as a sacrifice to these dead souls." There were more than 300 people on the same ship, but in the end, only they and a little girl managed to escape from the Devil Mountain. Yifei could understand this heavy feeling, but in the end, he shook his head and dispelled the Mad Dog's thoughts. "Big Brother Ji Feng, this is not our enmity, but her enmity. One day, she will personally come here and destroy this Devil Mountain as a sacrifice to the old couple." Mad Dog was stunned. However, when he saw the little girl's tear-stained face, he nodded subconsciously. "You are right. This is the only way for her to live better and work harder." Chapter 2376. City of 10,000 Swords in the Divine Prefecture. Every Lord-level city was surrounded by countless small and large countries. These countries were the vassals of the city. All the majestic cities were affiliated to the Red Moon Holy Dynasty. With so many countries and majestic cities, the number of things that happened every day was innumerable. The destruction of Chiyun's caravan was a small matter. It would only spread to the small countries nearby, but not to the huge city of 10,000 swords. Although it was called a city, any family from the city of 10,000 swords could establish a sect in the outside world. Because, just like the city of divine kings, the city of 10,000 swords had countless Tao lords, and divine lords were not rare. Occasionally, one would even see Rinzu's chariot passing by in the sky. Of course, in the city of 10,000 swords, except for divine lords and Rinzu, ordinary martial artists were not allowed to fly. This was the rules set by the Sword Palace. At the same time, the city of 10,000 swords was a paradise for swordsmen. Most of the people here were swordsmen. Not only the disciples of the Sword Palace, but many swordsmen from other regions also came to the city of 10,000 swords to train their swordsmanship. This city of 10,000 swords is truly flourishing. If I have the chance in the future, I'll take a look at it. If there's a chance, I can bring Xiaochan here to train. After so many years, Yifei had only accepted one disciple, and that was Yi Xiaochan. Yi Xiaochan was also very capable. She could cultivate without Yifei's guidance. Xiaochan's only shortcoming is that she does not have a special bloodline. It seems that as her master, I have to think of a way. Yifei thought to himself, his disciple could not be weaker than others. The first thing he did after entering the city of 10,000 swords was not to go to the Sword Palace, but to the stall selling Tonghulu. In one breath, he bought tens of thousands of Tonghulu, which attracted the attention of Bai Yin and Mad Dog. Even Xiao Rou looked at Yifei strangely. Xiao Rou was the name of the little girl that Yifei had saved. In order to help the little girl recover from the grief of her husband's death in battle, Yifei had deliberately delayed the journey. It took him a few months to reach the city of 10,000 swords. After this period of recuperation, Xiao Rou gradually walked out of her sadness. Seeing Yifei by so many candied haws, Xiao Rou was a little embarrassed and said, "Uncle Yi, I don't like sweet things." Yifei's face darkened. He pointed at the dragon turtle with a straight face and said, "Uncle didn't buy it for you. It's for the dragon turtle." The dragon turtle nodded with tears in his eyes and said gruffly. It attracted the attention of many passers-by. Ruru's face immediately turned red, attracting Bai Yinran's dissatisfied gaze. "We don't want you to buy anything for us. Ruru, what do you like? I'll buy it for you." "Thank you, Sister Bai," Xiao Rou said sweetly. Bai Yinran was overjoyed. He immediately grabbed Xiao Rou and wanted to go shopping. Yifei's face darkened. Mad Dog was also on guard. He hurriedly reminded, "Bai Yinran, Should we go to the Sword Palace first and find Ruru's father? After saving the little girl, Yi Fei was surprised to learn that Ruru's father seemed to have a very high status in the Sword Palace. This was also the reason why Ruru had 2 Dao Lords protecting her even though she didn't cultivate. Moreover, Yi Fei didn't forget that he had come to the Sword Palace to complete the 9 Heavens Sword Master's request. The 9 Heavens Sword Master had helped him a lot in the Earth Realm. The Undying Sword Soul was his most important trump card. In Yi Fei's heart, it was even more important than the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Only then did Bai Yanran give up. He said unhappily, "Then let's continue shopping after we meet Ruru's father." This time, not only did Yi Fei's face darken, but even Mad Dog was speechless. Then Yi Fei and Mad Dog tacitly pretended not to hear, and the two quickly walked forward together. The Sword Palace's location was also very easy to find, because the entire second half of the city of 10,000 swords was a huge divine sword stabbed into the ground. Bai Yanran pointed at the huge divine sword and said, "I once heard Patriarch Pan Wang say that this sword in the city of 10,000 swords is a real divine sword. Its origins are even older than the divine dynasty." Later, the Sword Palace gradually developed with this divine sword as the foundation. Then, did Pan Wang mention anything about the 9 Heavens Sword Master? Yi Fei asked hurriedly, but what he saw was Bai Yanran's blank expression. The Sword Palace has never had a Sword Master. The Sword Palace is divided into the inner and outer parts. Currently, the outer part of the Sword Palace is stronger than the inner part. That's all I know. Bai Yanran spread his hands. This made Yi Fei feel a little depressed. The 9 Heavens Sword Master was once the master of the Sword Palace. Why was there no news of him in the outside world? The three of them continued to walk forward. Ruru hugged the dragon turtle and looked nervously at the huge divine sword. The divine sword was getting bigger and bigger. Vaguely, there was a strong pressure from a sword. Inside the heavenly palace, the indestructible sword token that Yi Fei's divine soul was holding gave off a joyful aura when it sensed this aura. Stop! The Sword Palace is an important place. Those who are not disciples of the Sword Palace are not allowed to enter. At the entrance of the Sword Palace stood 2 young swordsmen who were full of heroic spirit. They both carried long swords on their backs and had a strong aura. Yi Fei nodded secretly. Holding Ruru's hand with Bai Yanran, he walked forward and said, "I am under the orders of 2 elders to bring this girl here to acknowledge her ancestry. Please inform them." Yi Fei's words shocked the 2 disciples of the Sword Palace. They looked at Ruru in shock, then looked at Yi Fei. "Are you serious? If you lie, the Sword Palace will punish you severely." "If I lie, I am willing to accept the punishment." Yi Fei cupped his hands solemnly and habitually revealed a simple smile. The 2 disciples of the Sword Palace were immediately influenced. They judged Yi Fei to be an honest person, and his words were most likely true. Their attitude softened. One of them said politely, "Please wait for a moment. I will go and report this to the elders." As he spoke, he hurriedly turned and ran into the Sword Palace. But just as he ran into the entrance, a group of white-robed swordsmen walked out. That person hurriedly avoided them and said, "Greetings, senior brothers. Who is outside? Why are you in such a hurry?" One of the white-robed swordsmen asked casually. "It's someone called Yi Fei. He brought a little girl with him. He said that she is a descendant of the Sword Palace who has been wandering outside. She is here to acknowledge her ancestry. We were just about to inform the elders." The disciple replied honestly. The other white-robed swordsmen did not think much of it. After all, the Sword Palace was a large organization. Just the number of disciples alone was in the hundreds of thousands. It was not strange for a descendant to wander outside. However, the white-robed swordsman who asked the question could not help but frown. "Yi Fei, I seem to have heard this name somewhere before." "Oh right, isn't this Supreme Emperor Heaven? Isn't that country bumpkin from the heavenly pool ancient land called Yi Fei?" Boom! Chapter 2377. Unsheathing the sword as expected. It's you. It's been a few years since we last met, But not only have you not improved, you even dare to come to my sword palace to deceive people. Do you think that the swords of my sword palace are bad for you?" The white-clothed swordsman's murderous aura made Yi Fei very suspicious. "Have we met before?" Yi Fei's words enraged the white-clothed swordsman even more. He was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. He coldly reminded Yi Fei, "Supreme Emperor Heaven, Heavenly Pool, Ancient Land. Do you remember now?" Yi Fei suddenly understood. No wonder this white-clothed swordsman looked familiar. This person was one of the swordsmen he had defeated in Supreme Emperor Heaven. "Sorry, I think you misunderstood. I still don't remember. I also haven't been to Supreme Emperor Heaven," Yi Fei calmly denied. After all, he had brought Xiao Rou here to acknowledge her ancestors. It would be best if he didn't have a conflict with the Sword Palace. He wanted to brush this matter aside, but the white-clothed swordsman clearly had no intention of letting Yi Fei go. He coldly said, "Yi Mo, don't even think about denying it. You're just a remnant of the heavenly palace of despair. Who knows if the little girl you brought back is really a descendant of the Sword Palace? Men, chase them away." The white-clothed swordsman had always been brooding over the fact that he had been defeated by Yi Fei in Supreme Emperor Heaven. Now that there was a chance to teach Yi Fei a lesson, he naturally wouldn't let it go. The nearby disciples of the Sword Palace also subconsciously stood on the white-clothed swordsman's side. They stared at Yi Fei with an unfriendly expression. However, since they were at the entrance of the Sword Palace, they couldn't make a move. Only the white-clothed swordsman coldly spat out a word. Scram! Boom! A sword light suddenly appeared and suppressed the void. Yi Fei stood with his heavy black iron sword. His sword was as heavy as a mountain and filled with an invisible pressure. This pressure even resonated with the swords in the hands of all the swordsmen present. Following Yi Fei's soft whistle, the swords of the nearby disciples of the Sword Palace suddenly trembled and left their scabbards. They gathered above Yi Fei's head like meteors and formed a terrifying cloud of sword chi. "It's been a long time since I've released my sword soul. Yi Fei, I brought the descendants of the Sword Palace to acknowledge their ancestors." Yi Fei's last time his voice was like thunder and directly past the white-clothed swordsman Yi. This was Yi Fei's method. He was too lazy to explain and directly used his sword to force out the person in charge of the Sword Palace. None of the swordsmen present expected Yi Fei to suddenly release the fledgling form of his sword soul and take away their swords. One had to know that the way of the sword was different from other martial arts. When other martial arts were cultivated to the limit, one could comprehend the will of a divine ability. But when the way of the sword was cultivated to a certain limit, what one could comprehend was the sword soul. Even though Yi Fei only grasped the fledgling form of the undying sword soul, it still had a terrifying suppressive power over the swords of others. The white-clothed swordsman's sword was also suddenly taken away by Yi Fei. He was immediately enraged. Without any hesitation, the large group of Sword Palace disciples all released their fledgling forms of their sword souls. Suddenly, they formed a formless wave of sword chi and fiercely collided with Yi Fei. Yi Fei was not afraid. It had been a long time since he had experienced a battle of the way of the sword. Right now, he could use these people to test his level of the way of the sword. Boom! An even stronger and fiercer aura of the sword soul suddenly exploded from Yi Fei's body. Yi Fei did not stop walking. He only held Xiao Rou's hand and strode forward. "Whoever dares to stop me, these swords will be your example. You better not force me to draw my sword." With a series of bangs, the swords that had been taken away by Yi Fei suddenly dimmed and were turned into piles of scrap metal by the aura of the undying sword soul. The white-clothed swordsman and the Sword Palace disciples' faces all changed. They did not expect that Yi Fei had not only comprehended the fledgling form of the sword soul, but also that it was so strong. He had directly blocked the attack of all their fledgling forms of sword souls alone. The white-clothed swordsman was so angry that his face was distorted. If we had entered the heavenly lake ancient land and received the baptism of the ancient emperor's origin, my achievements would only be greater than this person's. Quickly report that someone has openly drawn his sword and is trying to disrespect the sword palace. Realizing that Yi Fei was even stronger than before, the white-clothed swordsman clearly did not dare to attack Yi Fei. However, he had achieved his goal. Yi Fei's drawing of his sword in the Sword Palace was a provocation to the dignity of the Sword Palace, regardless of the reason. Who are you? Do you know the consequences of drawing your sword in the Sword Palace? A divine lord from the Sword Palace was actually alarmed and walked out personally. This made the white-clothed swordsman overjoyed. He quickly added fuel to the fire. Greetings, Martial Uncle Nyo. This person not only drew his sword in the Sword Palace, he is also a surviving member of the Heavenly Palace of Despair. The divine lord that appeared looked at Yi Fei with even more surprise. This made Bai Yanran and Mad Dog a little nervous. Why did you draw your sword in the Sword Palace just now? The divine lord actually ignored Yi Fei's identity. His eyes were filled with hope as he looked at Xiaoro, who was beside Yi Fei. Yi Fei's heart skipped a beat. He knew that the Divine Lord must have heard his words. At the same time, the Divine Lord did not have any prejudice against the Heavenly Palace of Despair. I drew my sword because I have the bloodline of the Sword Palace in me. I was once asked by an old couple to escort Xiaoro here. However, I was stopped and suspected by the disciples of the Sword Palace. I was displeased and drew my sword. Please forgive me if I was disrespectful. Yi Fei's attitude was very humble. The Divine Lord Nyo Hao could not help but think highly of Yi Fei. He continued asking without batting an eyelid. You mentioned the bloodline of the Sword Palace. Do you have any evidence to prove her identity? Yes. The old couple once gave me a token. Yi Fei thought for a moment before taking out the sword-shaped token. Renzu's token? How is that possible? This must be fake. The white-clothed swordsman was in disbelief. He subconsciously could not believe it. The Divine Lord Nyo Hao's eyes suddenly brightened. He laughed and said, That's right. This is Renzu's token. The token of the Sword Palace's Renzu. You should be the Lord's daughter, Jiang Xiaoro. Ever since the Lord received news about you, he specially sent people to pick you up. However, several months ago, there was no news of you at all. The Lord was so frightened that he almost left the palace to search for clues about you. By the way, didn't the intelligence say that a pair of Dao Lords would escort Miss Ro to the Sword Palace? Where's the old couple? The Divine Lord Nyo Hao looked at Yi Fei and the other two. He could not help but feel puzzled. The Divine Lord Yi Fei shook his head and sighed. The two seniors were besieged by the demon dwellers on Demon Mountain and have already fallen. Before they died, they entrusted me with the task of bringing Xiaoro to the Sword Palace. He immediately recounted what happened on Demon Mountain. The Divine Lord Nyo Hao's expression changed. What? Mere demon dwellers dared to attack the bloodline of the Sword Palace? Very good. No wonder there was no news of you for several months. Don't worry, Miss Ro. The old couple will not die in vain. The Sword Palace will make the demon dwellers of Demon Mountain pay the price in blood. Chapter 2378. Deliberately targeted, the nearby disciples of the Sword Palace were stunned. It was hard to imagine that a little girl would say such words. But when Nyo Hao heard this, he laughed loudly. Well said. As expected of Renzu's daughter. Don't worry, Miss Ro. As long as you meet your father and receive guidance from Renzu, you'll have the chance to take revenge with your own hands. Nyo Hao then looked at Yi Fei, Bai Yanran, and Mad Dog. The Sword Palace's outer palace is very grateful that you were able to escort Miss Ro here. However, right now, I will be bringing Miss Ro to meet the human ancestor and acknowledge her ancestry. Esteemed guests, please rest in the VIP pavilion for a few days. In the Sword Palace, acknowledging one's ancestry was not a small matter. It was not only a recognition of one's status, but also a bloodline awakening. Especially since Jiang Xiaoro was Renzu's daughter. After Nyo Hao finished speaking, he walked over to take Jiang Xiaoro away. The little girl was very nervous. She subconsciously grabbed Yi Fei's clothes and hugged the dragon turtle tightly. Yi Fei smiled and encouraged her. Xiaorou, don't worry. We will stay here and wait for you to acknowledge your ancestry. The little girl reluctantly put down the dragon turtle and walked timidly to Niu Hao's side. Niu Hao was very polite. As he comforted the little girl in a low voice, he didn't forget to instruct the 2 Dao lords who came out later. These 3 are the Sword Palace's honored guests. Treat them well and don't neglect them. When Niu Hao said that, he glanced at the white-clothed swordsman. Just this glance caused the white-clothed swordsman's body to go limp. His face was ashen as he fell to the ground. His heart was filled with endless regret. This dramatic turn of events stunned the other Sword Palace disciples. No one expected that the little girl Yi Fei brought here would have such an identity. She was Renzu's daughter. Just this identity alone was enough to make people faint. No one else dared to stop Yi Fei. Many people even looked at the paralyzed, white-clothed swordsman sympathetically and quietly distanced themselves from him. Yi Fei did not even look at the white-clothed swordsman. He would usually choose to ignore opponents whose names he could not even remember. Besides, Yi Fei had no interest in attacking a fellow whose legs turned to jelly after being glared at by a divine lord. He only calmly walked into the Sword Palace under the white-robed swordsman's regretful and horrified gaze. Looking at the little girl being taken away by Niu Hao, Bai Yanran was both disappointed and worried. Yi Fei, is it really okay for us to let a little girl live in hatred? Living in hatred is better than living in fear. I believe that Ruru will become stronger and stronger. By the way, seniors, since Ru is Renzu's daughter, why is she wandering outside and almost being hunted down by demons? Yi Fei could not help but ask curiously. The young Dao lord who was receiving them could not help but have a strange expression. Why don't you know? Sword Guardian Renzu was the most promiscuous when he was young. How many children did he have outside? I think even he himself? Silence. The other older Dao lord suddenly shouted coldly. With a stern face, he lectured Yi Fei. The 3 of you don't think that you can achieve meteoric success just because you escorted that little girl back. If she can't awaken a high-level bloodline during the ancestral recognition ceremony, the rewards you will receive will be limited. Therefore, after entering the VIP pavilion, you'd better not wander around. Be obedient and wait for Renzu to summon you. As they spoke, the 2 Dao lords had already brought Yi Fei and the other 2 to a magnificent palace. This palace was the VIP pavilion. There were countless pavilions and luxurious decorations. It was the Sword Palace, a place specially used to receive VIPs. The 2 Dao lords escorted them here and then left. Then, a slightly plump steward walked up coldly. He sized up the 3 of them and said, I heard that the 3 of you actually saved Sword Guardian Renzu's daughter. You're really lucky. Not all. We were asked to do our job. Senior, I have something I'd like to ask about. The 2 Dao lords were tight-lipped just now. Yi Fei could not ask about the 9th Heaven Swordmaster. He decided to use this plump steward as a breakthrough point. However, the plump steward did not have any intention of responding to Yi Fei. He waved his hand coldly and said, I'm not free. This is your room number. Take it and go behind the mountain in the east to find it. There were mountains and rivers in the VIP pavilion. Following the plump steward's instructions, Yi Fei suppressed his anger and went to his room. However, when he saw it, Yi Fei's expression changed. Mad Dog was so angry that the veins on his forehead were bulging. We went through so much trouble to save Sword Guardian Renzu's daughter. In the end, the Sword Palace made us stay in a thatched hut. That's right. The plump steward had assigned them a thatched hut, the kind where the 3 of them could squeeze together. Mad Dog was not the only one who was angry. Bai Yanran was also frowning. The Sword Palace is treating us like this. I'm suddenly worried about whether Ruru will be able to live a good life in the Sword Palace, Bai Yanran said worriedly. We don't have to worry about Ruru. After all, she is Renzu's daughter. Lord Niu Hao's care for her doesn't seem fake, Yi Fei said with certainty. Mad Dog pointed coldly at the thatched hut in front of them. Then how do you explain this? Yi Fei, Could it be that you've offended someone again? Yifei broke out in a cold sweat. He was depressed to find that he couldn't find any words to refute him. After all, it was obvious that they were being deliberately targeted in the current situation. However, in the Sword Palace, he seemed to have only had a conflict with a white-robed swordsman. And the white-robed swordsman didn't seem like someone with such power. But other than this person, Yifei couldn't think of anyone else he could have offended in the Sword Palace. Bai Yanran said angrily, "Since Ruru is fine, let's go. We don't have to suffer here." No, Yifei was shocked. He came to the Sword Palace to escort Jiang Ruru back to her ancestral home. His main purpose was to investigate the relationship between the Ninth Heaven Sword Master and the Sword Palace. How could he leave so easily at this time? Thinking of this, Yifei gritted his teeth and looked at Mad Dog. "Brother Jifeng, please go out and spread the news that we rescued Ruru. It's best if everyone knows about it." Although doing this was a bit of an act of blackmail, if the news spread, no one in the Sword Palace would dare to take the risk of repaying kindness with enmity and hurt them. The effect of Mad Dog's actions even exceeded Yi Fei's expectations. When the news spread throughout the city of 10,000 swords that someone had rescued Renzu's daughter, the fat manager of the VIP pavilion immediately ran over to Yi Fei, sweating profusely. He nodded and bowed to Yi Fei and desperately explained that he had arranged the wrong room. On the same day, the fat manager vacated 3 of the best rooms for Yi Fei and the others to live in. Even the dragon turtle was treated like a national treasure. Every day, it would open its mouth to eat. Yi Fei and Xiao Qiao were very impressed and had the urge to starve the dragon turtle for 10 meals. The 3 cultivators and the tortoise were enjoying their meals and accommodations in the VIP pavilion. The only thing that Yi Fei found strange was that the sword protector had yet to summon them. Even Xiao Rou was nowhere to be found. When he asked the plump manager about it, he was completely clueless about it. Chapter 2379. Death to Trespassers. The fat manager walked over with a radiant smile. "Congratulations, Miss Rou. You've already obtained the recognition of the higher-ups. Your contributions are also very great. The Palace Lord has specially ordered for you. The Palace Lord has ordered me to bring you to meet him. Thank you for your trouble." Yifei cupped his hands politely. Although this fat manager was a bit snobbish, the faster he could get in touch with the higher-ups of the Sword Palace, the more likely he would be able to find out about the Ninth Heaven Sword Master. Yifei naturally wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. Soon, he, Bai Yanran, and Mad Dog followed the fat manager out of the VIP pavilion and headed deeper into the Sword Palace. Along the way, many disciples of the Sword Palace looked at them in surprise. However, the fat manager obviously had a certain status in the Sword Palace, so no one stopped them along the way. Perhaps it was because Jiang Xiao Rou's identity had been confirmed, or perhaps it was because of Mad Dog's rumors, but the fat manager didn't dare to slight Yi Fei and was very polite along the way. Seeing this, Yi Fei's heart skipped a beat. He took the opportunity to ask, "Senior, I heard that the Palace Lord of the Sword Palace is the Ninth Heaven Sword Master. Are we going to meet her now?" "What Ninth Heaven Sword Master? Kid, don't talk nonsense if you don't know." The fat manager's expression changed when he heard this. It was as if the Ninth Heaven Sword Master was a taboo in the Sword Palace. Yi Fei was puzzled. He could only shrug and say, "When I was in Qingzhou, I heard that the strongest person in the Sword Palace was the Ninth Heaven Sword Master." Qingzhou, the fat manager almost laughed out loud. He had been wary of Yi Fei earlier, but when he heard that Yi Fei was from a small place like Qingzhou, he relaxed a lot. He sneered, "Your information is too outdated. Remember, there's no Ninth Heaven Sword Master in the Sword Palace now. Don't ask too much. Be careful." After saying that, the fat manager quickened his pace. Yi Fei was very angry. If he had been looking forward to the Sword Palace before coming here, his expectations now were very small. And they had become very small. Bai Yanran was still worried about Jiang Xiao Rou's situation when he saw that the fat manager had suddenly become easy to talk to. He couldn't help but ask, "Manager, how is Xiao Rou? Will we be able to meet her?" You don't have to worry about Miss Ro. She's doing very well in the Sword Palace. The Sword Protector forefather has already confirmed her identity. From now on, Miss Ro will be a direct descendant of the Sword Palace. The fat manager's tone became much more respectful when he mentioned Jiang Xiaoro. Yi Fei's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly asked, after Xiaoro returned to the clan, what grade of bloodline did she awaken? Yi Fei knew that it wasn't just the status of a direct descendant that could make the fat manager so respectful. Miss Ro awakened the 9th grade sky sword bloodline. This bloodline is very rare in the Sword Palace. That's why the Palace Lord has summoned you. The Palace Lord will definitely reward you handsomely for bringing back such a sword genius to the Sword Palace, the fat manager said enviously. Bai Ran and the Mad Dog were both dumbfounded. They didn't expect that the little girl they had casually saved would have such a strong talent. Yi Fei frowned. Jiang Xiaoro's bloodline talent was so strong that the Sword Palace should have protected her with all its might. However, the truth was that when he had met the little girl, Jiang Xiaoro, she had only been protected by 2 elderly Dao Lords. This was a far cry from her innate bloodline talent. Moreover, there were demons in the Sword Palace's territory who dared to attack and capture Jiang Xiaoro. This made things even stranger. No matter what's going on, Xiaoro was able to return to the Sword Palace and awaken the 9th grade sky sword bloodline. At least I have something to say to the elderly Dao Lord couple, Yi Fei thought to himself. In the Beastmark space, Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle pricked up their ears. When they heard that Jiang Xiaoro was fine and was living well, Xiao Qiao patted the dragon turtle and continued to happily eat the candied haws. At this time, Yi Fei and the other two had also passed through layers upon layers of winding corridors, palaces, and arrived in front of a majestic sword gate. That sword gate was actually the city of 10,000 swords, the godly sword that pierced half of the city. The divine sword stretched for hundreds of thousands of miles. It was like a sword mountain that was inserted into the ground and towered into the clouds. The gate to enter the divine sword was the sword gate in front of Yi Fei. The 3 of you, the Palace Lord is waiting for you inside. Please enter. The fat manager stood in front of the sword gate with a solemn expression and invited them. Bai Ran was a little hesitant. Mad Dog asked coldly, "Why don't you go in first?" The fat manager smiled bitterly and shook his head. In the Sword Palace, I'm just an insignificant person. There are at least 8,000 managers like me. How can I enter the sword gate so easily? On the other hand, if you hadn't made a great contribution this time, the Palace Lord wouldn't have summoned you to the sword gate. These words were reasonable. Bai Ran and Mad Dog let down their guard and looked up at Yi Fei. Yi Fei nodded slightly. In any case, with their strength, there was no way they could escape from the Sword Palace. Instead of making excuses, they might as well go in and take a look. With this thought in mind, Yi Fei took the lead and walked into the sword gate. Bai Ran and Mad Dog hurriedly followed. The 3 of them walked into the sword gate. The fat manager suddenly spat on the ground. Tui, 3 bumpkins. You don't even know the layout of the Sword Palace. How dare you casually bring that little girl back? Boom, boom, boom. Sword light flashed within the sword gate. Sword Palace disciples were everywhere, fighting each other. There were also many young Dao Lords with powerful auras watching the battle nearby, or giving guidance to their junior brothers and sisters. At the very front of the sword gate, there was a line of eye-catching words written in blood. Those who trespass into the sword gate die. Yi Fei's group's entrance gave many people a fright. They don't seem to be Sword Palace disciples. Someone discovered that Yi Fei's group was unfamiliar. They weren't wearing Sword Palace attire either. These words immediately caused a stir among the disciples of the Sword Gate. There were actually outsiders who had barged into the Sword Gate. Bai Ran and Mad Dog were even more stunned. Didn't you say that the Sword Palace Lord would receive us? Why are there so many Sword Palace disciples here? Ha ha ha, have you all gone mad? Throughout history, only divine lords have been received by the Sword Palace Lord. The Sword Gate is an important place of the Sword Palace. Outsiders who aren't disciples of the Sword Palace are not allowed to enter. A young man with a sword on his back walked over from the crowd. His entire body was covered in sword light, giving off a strong sense of oppression. His cold gaze swept over Yi Fei. What he saw by Yanran, the young man's eyes clearly brightened. He actually directly scanned by Yanran's body. By Yanran's heart immediately burned with anger. He turned to Yi Fei and said, "Yi Fei, I don't want to stay here anymore. If you don't want to stay, then let's go." Yi Fei nodded. The situation in the Sword Gate made him understand that the fat manager had obviously tricked them. The Sword Palace Lord summons was also obviously a lie. Chapter 2380. Sword Dao Crush Yi Fei turned around and left, ignoring the people of Swordgate and the white-robed youth. The youth's expression was extremely gloomy. Many of the Sword Palace disciples also had cold smiles on their faces. These three people are really bold. They didn't know anything and just barged into Swordgate. They even dared to ignore senior brother Ma Yuan. Haha, maybe this is what they mean by the ignorant being fearless. There were also disciples of Swordgate who sneered. They didn't give Yi Fei a chance to leave at all. With a whoosh, the sound of swords could be heard everywhere. Countless swords had already shot out from all directions like a dense rainstorm. They surrounded Yi Fei by Yanran and Mad Dog and stabbed into the ground, forming a circular sword formation. Within the sword formation, there was a white-robed swordsman standing proudly on top of each sword. Bai Yanran and Mad Dog's expressions became more and more unpleasant. Yi Fei also frowned slightly. He turned around helplessly and said, "We didn't mean to barge into Sword Gate. We were framed by the fat steward of the VIP pavilion. He said that the Palace Lord of Sword Palace would receive us here. I didn't expect it to be a scam. I don't care if you were tricked or deceived. You have seen the rules of Sword Gate. Those who barge into Sword Gate will die. You barged in without permission. Then you must die." Ma Yuan sneered. He didn't care about Yi Fei at all. Ma Yuan's gaze only cautiously swept over Mad Dog. Soon, it fell on Bai Yanran. "Miss, I can't break the rules of Sword Gate. But if you are willing to be my maidservant, perhaps I could be lenient and let you live." Boom! As he spoke, sword light whistled behind Ma Yuan like a raging wave. It stirred up the countless swords that were stabbed into the ground, making clanging sounds. Ma Yuan didn't give Yi Fei a chance to continue explaining. He also didn't ask whether Bai Yanran was willing to be his maidservant. The whistling sword light was like a torrential flood, rushing towards Mad Dog without asking. How could Mad Dog endure such provocation? With a crazed roar, Mad Dog's fingertips were like sharp swords. They carried the power to rip apart the wind as they clawed forward, tearing the void and shattering the torrent of sword light in the surroundings. That looks like Deathmatch Palace's wind-ripping claw. I've been to the Deathmatch arena before. A Sword Palace disciple in the crowd recognized Mad Dog's divine power. Ma Yuan's expression changed, but then he sneered and said, "So what if it's the Deathmatch Palace? Only core disciples like us and the direct descendants of the Sword Palace can enter the Sword Gate. Any outsider who enters must die. This is the ancestral rule." After one wave of sword light was shattered, another wave of sword light that was even stronger erupted like a torrential flood. This was the divine power of the Sword Palace, the torrential flood sword technique. It was based on the eruption of a torrential flood. At this time, Ma Yuan had pushed this divine power to the limit. In an instant, the entire sky was filled with raging torrents. The sword light shook heaven and earth as it pierced forward and collided with Mad Dog's wind-ripping claw. In just 3 strikes, it had broken through the wind-ripping claw and pierced towards Mad Dog's chest. Kill! Ma Yuan did not show any mercy. Not only did he attack, but he also drew on the power of the sword formation. The mighty sword chi became more and more terrifying as it pierced through Mad Dog's protective divine power and physical defense. The last strike was like a flash of lightning as it pierced towards Mad Dog's throat. Mad Dog roared angrily. He had not used his full strength at the beginning, and had not even released his divine power. But Ma Yuan was relentless. He was determined to kill him. The sword is not bad, but the person is too weak. Just as the sword light was about to pierce Mad Dog's throat, Yi Fei's figure suddenly appeared and blocked in front of Mad Dog. At the same time, a heavy sword light, like a comet, collided with Ma Yuan's torrential flood sword technique. The torrential sword light suddenly seemed to have hit an immovable divine mountain. The sword light stopped, and the torrential flood disappeared. Only then did Mad Dog come to his senses. Cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He had failed once, and now he had failed again. In the future, when facing these swordsmen, I have to go all out at all times. You actually managed to block my sword. I made a mistake. It turns out that you are the strongest of the three. Unfortunately, bringing that little girl back was your biggest mistake. Ma Yuan's face revealed a sinister glint as he mocked in a voice that only the two of them could hear. At the same time, he did not intend to continue fighting with Yi Fei. Instead, he suddenly retreated, revealing more than 10 Sword Palace Dao lords behind him. Kill them all. Any outsider who trespasses in the Sword Gate must die, Ma Yuan ordered coldly. More than 10 beams of intense sword light appeared behind him. It was obvious that he was going to kill them. Yi Fei was completely enraged. He did not speak. He only used his actions to prove his anger. The Taiji sword cauldron whistled out. Just as the Sword Palace Dao Lord surrounded him, it suddenly slashed towards Ma Yuan. Ma Yuan was instantly enraged. Ant, how dare you use your sword in my sword palace? Ma Yuan's retreating body suddenly came to a halt. He no longer charged at the Mad Dog. Instead, he continued to charge at Yi Fei. The fierce sword light suddenly transformed into 2 mighty divine dragons. They raised their heads and opened their mouths, spewing out endless sword light. Yi Fei snorted coldly. He slammed the Taiji sword cauldron forward. The Taiji on the cauldron flashed, blocking the divine dragons. The heavy sword in his hand burned. He slashed out a killing sword light. The world was filled with an endless aura of death. Yi Fei held the sword of death in his hand and continued to attack Ma Yuan. Thunderclap's sword, 10,000 layers of light. Ma Yuan's sword suddenly changed from a divine dragon to a swift thunderclap. It bypassed the Taiji sword cauldron and stabbed towards Yi Fei's chest and back. Back off! As if he did not notice the 2 thunderclap sword lights, Yi Fei strode forward. The black iron heavy sword instantly turned into the sword of death. It broke through the thunderclap sword chi and continued to slash forward. Ma Yuan's expression changed from a sneer to one of horror. He was terrified of Yi Fei's sword Dao. In the city of 10,000 swords, the strongest was the Sword Palace. There were very few outsiders who could defeat the Sword Palace disciples in the Sword Dao. Yi Fei, on the other hand, had not only won, he had completely crushed his opponent. I don't believe that I can't beat you after 30 years of learning the sword. Ma Yuan roared. Suddenly, his sword spirit appeared. His sword spirit was a strange existence that was half dragon and half sword. But like Yi Fei, this sword spirit was still incomplete. After all, even though a sword spirit was also a mystique will, it was much harder to comprehend and master than a mystique will. Correspondingly, when the sword spirit was complete, the amplification of the sword Dao from the sword spirit would be much stronger than a mystique will. At this moment, under the amplification of the half-dragon sword spirit, the sword in Ma Yuan's hand had almost completely turned into a divine dragon. It let out an angry roar like an ancient divine dragon. Chapter 2381. They're all lunatics. Kill. As Ma Yuan's sword was broken, the other Dao lords of the Sword Palace finally stopped watching from the sidelines. Instead, they attacked with their swords. More than 10 sword lights formed a sword light that could topple mountains and overturn seas at the same time, whistling over. When these beams of sword light gathered together, they formed the image of mountains and rivers. With the momentum of heaven and earth, they came crashing down on Yi Fei, Bai Yanran, and Mad Dog. Bai Yanran's expression changed. With a shout, Dark forest palm winds formed into mountains that appeared in the surroundings. Beside the mountains, rivers appeared. It was a magnificent sight. This was Pan King's martial arts divine ability. Pan King stands on the ground. Thousands of mountains revolve. Roar. Another savage roar came from Mad Dog's mouth. Countless claw shadows formed a hurricane that tore through the void. This was Mad Dog's true strength. Under the claw shadows, the nearby treasured swords that were stuck in the ground trembled. The Sword Palace disciples had to use all their strength to suppress them. Many people's expressions changed when they looked at Bai Yanran and Mad Dog. They didn't expect the two of them to have such powerful combat strength. They didn't seem like the ordinary Lord of Heaven and Tao lords at all. But the fiercest was still Yi Fei. Facing the images of mountains and rivers formed by more than a dozen Tao lords, his expression didn't change. The light from his dark steel heavy sword soared into the sky. At the same time, in the Sky Palace, the indestructible sword token in Yi Fei's hand suddenly shone with divine light, and the aura of a sword soul appeared. Even though Yi Fei's sword soul aura was the same as Ma Yuan's and was only in the embryonic form of a sword soul, Yi Fei's sword soul was the undying sword soul, while Ma Yuan's sword soul was only a half-dragon sword soul. The same embryonic form of the sword soul had a different effect on the improvement of the sword Tao divine ability. Boom! The instant Yi Fei's sword soul embryonic form appeared, the entire dark steel heavy sword turned into a black meteor burning with sword light. Boundless sword light smashed forward, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. Ma Yuan's expression also became one of complete terror. Sword soul? Yi Fei was able to comprehend the sword soul that only the disciples of the Sword Palace could comprehend. This caused him to panic. The thunderclap sword of light he released was unable to block Yi Fei's sword of death, sword of light of death. Two loud bangs rang out consecutively, as if the heavens and earth had split apart. Ma Yuan's sword beam completely collapsed. Ma Yuan's expression turned extremely sinister at this moment. Yi Fei, your sword is very strong, but you must die. Concentrate all your strength and kill him alone. Kill! Ma Yuan roared. The shattered sword light suddenly turned into a stream of light and fused with the sword light of the dozen Tao lords. Instantly, the power of the sword light grew stronger and more intense. Yi Fei felt as though he was being swallowed up by the boundless sword light. Then, the sword light formed mountains and rivers. The power of the mountains and rivers seemed to overturn the heavens and earth as they crushed downward. The pressure was like a mountain and the sword light was like an ocean. However, just as the mountains and rivers were about to crush Yi Fei, layers of flames suddenly burst out from Yi Fei's body. These weren't real flames, but the light of despair formed by the battle demon nomological laws, the earth core nomological laws, and the sword cauldron nomological laws at the same time. This was the light of the golden body of despair. When this light appeared on Yi Fei's body, Yi Fei instantly unleashed the boundless might of the battle demon. So what if you have mountains and rivers? My sword can destroy mountains and seas. Phenomenon break. Boom. The heavy sword burned and divine inscriptions appeared. Yi Fei held the heavy sword in his hand and tore apart the heavens and seas. At the same time, Ma Yuan and the dozen Tao lords of the Sword Palace roared furiously. They pushed their sword light to the limit in an attempt to combine forces and kill Yi Fei. However, Yi Fei was too fast. Huge azure dragon wings appeared on his back, causing Yi Fei's speed to suddenly break through his own limits. He didn't wait for the Tao lords to complete the mountain and river phenomenon. Within the mountains and rivers, a huge withered sword light appeared. This was Yi Fei's second origin mystique, the withered sword. This type of sword was not very offensive, but the most important function of the solitary sword was that it could break mystiques. Even though this mystique was a mountain-river phenomenon created by more than 10 Tao lords, the moment it encountered the Sword of Solitude still managed to cut a huge hole in the mountain-river phenomenon formed by the sword light. Yi Fei's body forcefully resisted the pressure of the mountain river sword Qi through this hole and charged out. This is impossible. Outside, Ma Yuan's face was filled with horror. He never expected that his joint attack with more than a dozen Dao Lords would not only fail to kill Yi Fei, but also allow Yi Fei to use a strange sword light to forcefully create a gap in their mountain and river phenomenon. Then, Ma Yuan saw a hand reach out from the sword light that filled the sky. Ma Yuan instinctively wanted to dodge, but Yi Fei's speed was too fast. The speed of the Azure Dragon wings was not something Ma Yuan could dodge. He only felt a fiend celestial hand suddenly reach out and choke him. Then, the hand tightened its grip. He fell to the ground. Then, another godlike foot stomped heavily on his back with the weight of Mount Tai. As a direct descendant of the Sword Palace, he was actually being stepped on by a foreign country bumpkin. This was definitely a humiliation that Ma Yuan had never experienced before. Then, a roar came from the other Dao Lords like a raging volcano. Let go of senior brother Ma Yuan, and we'll leave your corpse intact. Are you all threatening me? Yi Fei's cold voice came from within the purple gold light. Then, an even colder sword stabbed out. It was the dark, iron-heavy sword. The heavy sword smashed into the ground with great force, causing the ground of the sword's gate to shake violently. Following that, Ma Yuan's blood-curdling screams could be heard. When the heavy sword smashed into the ground, it also nailed Ma Yuan's thigh to the ground. If anyone dares to take a step closer, the next sword will definitely not nail their thigh to death. Yi Fei looked indifferently at everyone in the Sword Palace. The Dao Lords were just about to attack, all sucked in a cold breath. Lunatic, this is definitely a lunatic. Does he know what kind of status Ma Yuan has in the Sword Palace? Does he know what serious consequences there will be if he stomps Ma Yuan to the ground? Who cares about the consequences? Sword Palace was heartless first. Then, don't blame us for being unjust. Mad Dog sneered and suddenly walked to Ma Yuan's side. He slashed at Ma Yuan's body with his tearing wind claw. In an instant, a tenth of Ma Yuan's bones were shattered. I went easy on you just now, but you tried to kill me with all your strength. Now we're even. Mad Dog stood up. As an expert on the slaughter list, he was definitely not a kind person. The excruciating pain almost caused Ma Yuan to faint. The nearby Sword Palace disciples all sucked in a cold breath. Lunatics, these three are all lunatics. Not only did they trespass into the Sword Palace, they even dared to torture a direct descendant of the Sword Palace. Chapter 2382. What sin was there? Ma Yuan was captured, and Yi Fei and Mad Dog were in frenzy. Although there were many Sword Palace disciples, none of them dared to attack Yi Fei. They only surrounded him. Some of them had already rushed out of Sword Gate to report to the Sword Palace elders. Yi Fei, the way you treated senior apprentice brother Ma Yuan has already alarmed a divine Lord Elder. If you don't want to die, you'd best release senior apprentice brother Ma Yuan immediately. Hundreds and thousands of swords pointed towards Yi Fei. These Sword Palace disciples would not hesitate to kill Yi Fei to protect the dignity of the Sword Palace. This made by Yin Ran and Mad Dog tense. After all, this was the Sword Palace, one of the top 10 factions of the Divine Prefecture. Its status was not inferior to that of the Palace of the Divine Kings, the overlord of the City of Divine Kings. However, there seemed to be someone secretly looking for an excuse to kill them. Yi Fei's expression also turned serious. His current strength could suppress a Dao Lord, but not a Divine Lord. Moreover, there was still Rinzhu above a Divine Lord. Bai Yinran, Brother Ji Feng, let's go out too, Yi Fei said in a low voice. Sword Gate was obviously an important place of the Sword Palace. Entering without permission was equivalent to suicide. He didn't want the Divine Lords to find an excuse to attack. Only then did he pull out the heavy sword that had impaled Ma Yuan. The intense pain caused Ma Yuan to roar like a beast. The surrounding disciples of the Sword Palace were in an uproar. Some people's sword lights had already begun to whistle. They wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to attack. Even if they couldn't kill Yi Fei, even if they could capture 2 of his companions, they would still have bargaining chips to exchange hostages with Yi Fei. Unfortunately, Bai Yanran and Mad Dog didn't give these people a chance. Almost as soon as Yi Fei pulled his heavy sword out of the ground, Bai Yanran quickly rushed forward and released a divine pattern that he had prepared beforehand, completely sealing Ma Yuan's cultivation. Mad Dog, on the other hand, dragged Ma Yuan by his leg, as if he was dragging a dead pig out of Sword's Gate. Yi Fei's sword was directly placed on Ma Yuan's body. "Whoever dares to come near, don't blame my sword for being merciless," Yi Fei said coldly. The 3 of them cooperated well and rushed out of Sword's Gate at the fastest speed possible, returning to the palace outside. Outside the Sword Palace, the fat manager did not leave. Instead, he stared at Yi Fei and company as though he was looking at a monster. Can they still survive after entering the Sword Palace? The one being dragged on the ground is actually young Master Ma Yuan. The plump manager's face turned pale. Yi Fei's eyes flashed with killing intent the moment he saw this person. It was this person who had tricked them into Sword's Gate and put them in danger. "I don't care if you deliberately set us up or if someone ordered you to do so. I can't let you go." Yi Fei raised his sword and rushed towards the plump manager. He also wanted to find out who was behind this through this person and set up the trap in secret. "Stop!" A fierce roar came from the distant sky. The divine lords of the Sword Palace were rushing over very quickly. When they saw that Yi Fei dared to drag a direct descendant of the Sword Palace on the ground, the divine lord who rushed over didn't ask any questions. He raised his hand, and a huge sword beam slashed towards Yi Fei. Bai Yanran and Mad Dog's expressions changed at the same time. The disciples of the Sword Palace cheered. "Great! It's the Tri-Treasure Divine Lord. Let's see how these 2 lunatics can continue being so arrogant." Ma Yuan's face was filled with surprise and savagery. He roared loudly, "You 3 country bumpkins, do you think you can walk out of the Sword Palace alive by capturing me? You will only die faster." Noisy. Yi Fei didn't say anything. He suddenly kicked Ma Yuan with the tip of his foot. A large hand had already grabbed Ma Yuan's throat and lifted him into the air to block the sword beam released by the Divine Lord. The Divine Lord who rushed over was extremely angry, but he had no choice but to quickly disperse the sword beam. Otherwise, when the sword beam reached him, not only would Yi Fei die, Ma Yuan would also die. At the same time, the Divine Lord's body transformed into a sword beam and suddenly disappeared in front of Yi Fei. He appeared behind Yi Fei and released an even stronger sword beam to kill Yi Fei. Yi Fei was completely enraged. Has the Sword Palace fallen to such a state? What a disgrace to the name of the 9th Heaven Sword Master. Suddenly, Yi Fei threw Ma Yuan to the ground. He shouted to Bai Yanran and Mad Dog, "We will guard this place. If anyone dares to approach this circle, we will attack together and drag Ma Yuan down with us." "All right." Mad Dog's expression didn't change. His eyes were crazed. "All right." Bai Yanran also nodded. She stepped on Ma Yuan's body domineeringly and accidentally stepped on Ma Yuan's bleeding wound. Just now, when Ma Yuan looked at her with an evil look and spoke obscenely to her, Bai Yanran had been suppressing her anger for a long time. The sharp pain also made Ma Yuan scream like a pig being slaughtered. "Elder Sanbao, don't come over. They're all crazy. If you attack, they will really kill me. How dare you?" Sensing the killing intent of Yi Fei and the others, the Tri-Treasure Divine Lord was furious. His sword even shattered the clouds, but he didn't dare to cut down. "This is the Sword Palace. Even if you capture Ma Yuan, once Renzu attacks, he can kill you from a distance. He won't give you a chance to attack. Let Ma Yuan go, and you can still live." Since force didn't work, the Tri-Treasure Divine Lord could only use soft tactics. Hearing this, Bai Yanran and Mad Dog's expressions changed. What the Tri-Treasure Divine Lord said was true. Renzu did have the ability to kill them instantly, even if they had a hostage. Yi Fei sneered. "We didn't avoid danger. We risked our lives to escort the bloodline of the Sword Palace back. The Sword Palace not only didn't thank us, but also deliberately deceived us and set us up to enter the Sword Gate. Is this what the Sword Palace said? Is this what a swordsman does? If so, you don't deserve to use swords. Boom! Yi Fei's words were like thunder, rolling out and spreading even further. Yi Fei didn't only want his words to spread to the Sword Palace, but also to the entire city of 10,000 swords. The expressions of the Sword Palace disciples all changed. Ma Yuan and the fat manager suddenly began to tremble uncontrollably. Lastly, the Tri-Treasure Divine Lord was so angry that a terrifying murderous intent appeared. Shut up. You've misled the public with your lies and tarnished the reputation of the Sword Palace. You deserve death. Ma Sanbao, you're the one who should shut up. If you attack, you'll really tarnish the reputation of the Sword Palace. As a Divine Lord, you're so aggressive toward a junior of the Lord of Heaven. Don't you feel ashamed? Suddenly, an even stronger Divine Lord aura came from the sky, causing Ma Sanbao's expression to change. Niu Hao, didn't he go to investigate the Demon Mountain? Why is he back now? Although he was shocked, Ma Sanbao still shouted, Niu Hao, mind your own business. These three people not only trespassed into the Sword Gate, but also injured and humiliated Ma Yuan. If we don't kill them, how can the dignity of the Sword Palace exist? Chapter 2383. Thousand Swords Grave Sir God Niu Hao's words were sonorous, like the sound of a sword reverberating through the earth. It made the blood of those who heard it boil, and they deeply agreed. Yi Fei also secretly heaved a sigh of relief. They understood that as long as Sir God Niu Hao was around, they would be able to get through this incident safely. Thank you, Senior Ox, for upholding justice for us. Yi Fei cupped his hands towards the sky and thanked him sincerely. Niu Hao laughed and suddenly descended from the sky to Yi Fei's side. He patted Yi Fei's shoulder and said, You are my lord's benefactors, which means you are Niu Hao's benefactors. There is no need to thank me. However, Ma Yuan is in the wrong. In the end, he is a direct descendant of the Sword Palace. You can injure him, but if you accidentally kill him, then it will be troublesome. His attitude was very sincere. Every forefather of man had many powerful followers. Without a doubt, Niu Hao was a follower of the forefather of man who protected the sword. I wonder whose follower this Tri-Treasure Celestial Lord is. Yi Fei thought to himself. Bai Yin and Mad Dog also took a step back. Since the Divine Lord had appeared, the situation could not be too tense. Ma Yuan, on the other hand, was heavily injured and had many of his bones broken by Mad Dog. Even though Yi Fei and the other two had retreated, Ma Yuan was still unable to stand up. He could only continue to lie on the ground like a dead dog, attracting many strange gazes. This made Ma Yuan, who usually considered himself a genius, so angry that he vomited blood on the spot. He felt as if his heart was being stabbed by a knife as he roared, Tri-Treasure Divine Lord, they deserve to die for humiliating me like this, even if they have done something. Kill. The Tri-Treasure's immortal lord suddenly roared. Yi Fei's threat had infuriated him. Even though Niu Hao had stepped in, he still had no intention of letting Yi Fei and company off. The anger of immortal lord must be appeased with blood. How dare you? Then I, old Niu, will let you quell your anger. Ma Sanbao, kneel down. Sir Immortal Niu Hao roared. The Tri-Treasure Celestial Lord's attack came to an abrupt halt. At the same time, he looked unwillingly at the token in Niu Hao's hand. Yi Fei recognized it at a glance. It was the Renzu token he had brought back. However, the divine inscriptions on it were slightly different. This is the Order of the Sword Protector Renzu. Seeing this order is like seeing Renzu. If you don't kneel, are you trying to rebel? Niu Hao shouted again. All the disciples of the Sword Palace present knelt down in front of Niu Hao. The Dao Lords who had attacked Yi Fei were all trembling in fear. Ma Yuan was so frightened that he didn't dare to say anything else. Dong! The Tri-Treasure Celestial Lord was trembling with anger. He knelt down on one knee helplessly and glared at Niu Hao. Then, he glanced coldly at Yi Fei. Consider yourselves lucky. However, in the Sword Palace, it's better to keep your eyes open. Who can be provoked and who can be fawned over? You have to watch carefully, step by step. Oomph. The Tri-Treasure's celestial lord didn't attack after bowing. Instead, he turned around angrily and was about to leave. Niu Hao also stopped when he saw this. He said to Yi Fei, "Today's matter is the fault of the Sword Palace. I guarantee that you will be compensated. Ma Yuan is a direct descendant of the Sword Palace. If something happens to him, it won't be good for anyone. Yi Fei, how about you let Ma Yuan go first?" Yi Fei nodded, but didn't withdraw his sword. Instead, he pointed at Ma Yuan and said, "Ma Yuan is injured. I can't kill him, but I was framed and almost died in the Sword Gate. Do you think I can let it go with just one sentence? Then what do you want? Remember, this is the Sword Palace. It's not the grassland you're familiar with." Suddenly, the Tri-Treasure Celestial Lord turned around again. He still had a sword light in his hand. When he saw that Yi Fei still wanted to pursue the matter, the sword light in his hand finally left his hand. However, this sword light didn't slash at Yi Fei, but at the fat steward. With a poof, the fat steward's eyes widened. His head rolled on the ground. Even in death, the fat steward couldn't believe that he had died before he even had a chance to speak. "You said that someone framed you. Where's the evidence? Show it to me." The Tri-Treasure Celestial Lord's expression was indifferent. It was as if he had just killed a chicken or duck. The nearby Sword Palace disciples were so frightened that they fell silent. The Tao Lords who had attacked Yi Fei were so frightened that they trembled. They were afraid that the Tri-Treasure Celestial Lord would also silence him. Fortunately, those who could enter the Sword Gate were all elite disciples of the Sword Palace. The Tri-Treasure Celestial Lord wouldn't go too far. He only gave Yi Fei a sidelong glance with a mocking expression before turning around and leaving quickly. "Yi Fei, don't take it to heart. As compensation, I'll personally escort you into the Sword Gate. Let's see who dares to stop us. As for Ma Yuan, he's just a piece of shit. Just let him go." Niu Hao advised. Yi Fei sheathed his sword and let Ma Yuan go thoughtfully. Ma Yuan was so ashamed that he wanted to die. As a direct descendant of the Sword Palace, he had always been high and mighty. He treated others like dirt, and people like Yi Fei were lowly commoners. But now he had been trampled under the feet of a lowly commoner who had never taken him seriously and beaten like a dead dog. Niu Hao even treated him like a piece of shit. Ma Yuan was so angry that he couldn't catch his breath and fainted. Yi Fei shook his head inwardly. Ma Yuan was talented in the Sword Tao, but his temperament was still too shallow. This time, with Niu Hao leading the way, Yi Fei no longer had any doubts. He happily followed Niu Hao and entered the Sword Gate again. The Sword Gate was empty. In the distance, there were mountain peaks that formed sword mountains of various shapes and sizes. Niu Hao pointed at the sword mountains and said, "Do you see those mountain peaks? That's the most mysterious myriad sword tomb of our Sword Palace. As long as you enter the myriad sword tomb, you'll be able to sense the complete sword soul. Therefore, in the entire heaven realm, any martial artist who uses the sword greatly admires the myriad sword tomb of our Sword Palace. They hate that they can't enter it to cultivate." Niu Hao explained proudly as he led the way. Yi Fei didn't say anything. He seemed to be deep in thought. Mad Dog said with a face full of surprise, "This is the myriad sword tomb that the headmaster mentioned before. It is said that there is a high chance that one can awaken a martial path divine ability in the sword tomb." That's right. This is the function of the myriad sword tomb. However, outsiders are generally not allowed to enter the myriad sword tomb. If you want to enter, you have to go through a very strict test. Only by being recognized by the myriad sword tomb can you enter the sword tomb to cultivate. Moreover, the higher the level of recognition, the greater the range of activities you can move about in the sword tomb, Niu Hao said. Yi Fei nodded secretly when he heard this. As he ended his contemplation, he couldn't help but develop a strong interest in the sword tomb. After all, in the Earth realm, he already had the embryonic form of Sword Soul. He even fused it with the undying Sword Soul. It was just that in the Earth realm, he still didn't know how to condense a complete sword soul. And in the Sword Palace, he obviously found a way to improve. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.